Buff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another reading with Quarantine Theater Company. This is the movie Pleasantville, and we have a great cast today. Nicole will be reading as Jennifer. Kevin and Anne are going to be George and Betty Parker. Chelsea will be Dick Van Dyke, or however she chooses to play that. Logan will be Mr. Johnson. George will be Bob. George isn't George. George is Bob this time. Paul is Biff. Paul is the Paul Walker. Cate is reading our scene description. Travis is miscellaneous everything. Everybody's also miscellaneous everything, but Travis is Mr. Miscellaneous. And I'll be reading as David. So thank you for joining us, and take it away, Cate.
Pleasantville, a fairy tale by Gary Ross. October 7th, 1996. He was part of my dream, of course, but then I was part of his dream too. Lewis Carroll, Through the Looking Glass. Fade in. Interior high school auditorium day. A college counselor stands at the podium lecturing the high school seniors about their future.
It's Paul.
I'm so sorry.
So then start.
For those of you going on to college next year, the chance of finding a good job will actually decrease by the time you graduate. Entry-level jobs will drop from 31 to 26%, and the median income for those jobs will go down as well.
There's something rustling in the audience.
Obviously, my friends, it's a competitive world, and good grades are your only ticket through. By the year 2000,
Interior high school health class. A different teacher lectures a different class of students.
The chance of contracting HIV from a promiscuous lifestyle will climb to 1 in 150. The odds of dying in an auto accident are only 1 in 2,500. Now this marks a drastic increase.
Interior high school science class. Same angle, different teacher.
From just 4 years ago, when ozone depletion was at 10% of its current level, by the time you are 20 years old, averaging global temperature will have risen 2.5 degrees. Even a shift of 1 degree can cause such catastrophic consequences as typhoons, floods, widespread drought, and
Typhoons. Anyway, reverse angle students. They stare back in stunned silence. One of them, David Wagner, sits in the front row with a pencil in his mouth. Nobody moves.
Okay, who can tell me what famine is?
Cut to 1958. Birds are chirping, the sun is shining, all the hedges are neatly pruned, and the lawns are perfectly manicured. A sweet stillness hangs over the suburban street, which is bathed in beautiful black and white.
Honey, I'm home.
Suburban home. George Parker enters the front door and hangs his hat on the coat rack. He sets his briefcase down and moves into the foyer with a huge smile on his face. It's a frozen smile that doesn't seem to be affected by too much in particular, like a tour guide at Disneyland or Warner Brothers.
Hello, darling.
Wider, Mrs. George Parker, Betty, enters, untying the back of her apron. She's a vision of 50s beauty with thin figure and concrete hair. Betty crosses to her husband and hands him a fresh martini. She kisses him on the cheek.
How was your day?
Oh, swell. You know, Mr. Connell said that if things keep going the way they are, I might be seeing that promotion sooner than I thought.
Oh, darling, that's wonderful. I always knew you could do it.
Wagner living room nights, 1996, live in color. David Wagner sits on his couch watching this entire action on a sleek new Sony TV. He stares riveted at the set with a big smile on his face. David wears black shoes, black pants, black t-shirt, black baseball cap. Not a nerd exactly. He reaches next to him into a huge bag of Doritos, never taking his eyes off the show.
Hey, Pumpkin, what's that smell? Is that your meatloaf?
It might be.
He leans over and kisses her again on the cheek.
It might be.
Kiss her again.
I'm having
Oh.
deja vu flashbacks.
Oh, pumpkin.
You skipped my line.
Show the way to this man's heart.
You didn't need it. There's a loud and inappropriate laugh track. Like us, David smiles wider and just about to reach for more corn chips when his real mother's voice, oh, the real mother, you're not my real mom, rings out from the other room.
Bullshit, Barry. That wasn't the deal.
Interior kitchen. David's mom paces the room with the phone in her hand. Between the plastic surgery and the makeup, it's hard to fix her age.
No, you have custody the first weekend of every month, and this is the first weekend. I don't care if yesterday was the 30th. This is still the first weekend.
Interior living room. Her words drift in from the kitchen while David stares at the show.
No, I can't bail you out. I'm supposed to go to La Costa. Well, if I want to have a mud bath, that's really my business, isn't it?
He reaches out and turns up the sound. Pleasantville plays at an unnaturally high volume.
Hey, where are those kids?
Right behind you, Father.
Right behind you, Father.
Resume TV, black and white. The Parker son and daughter, Bud and Mary Sue, enter the foyer together. Mary Sue wears her hair in a ponytail. Bud has on a Letterman sweater.
Mother, Father, Bud has a little surprise for you.
What's that, Bud?
Bud hesitates for a moment, then folds up a shiny blue ribbon.
You're muted.
First prize of the science fair. There were lots of swell projects. Guess mine was just the swellest.
Oh, darling, that's wonderful. Except there's no such word as swellest.
Well, gee whiz, Mom. It wasn't the English fair.
There's another jarring laugh track. Close up on David. He smiles right along with it. David stares transfixed at the set despite the continuing conversation in the other room.
Well, sure they can stay by themselves, Barry, but that's not the point. You said you'd take them. Well, fine, they'll stay by themselves then.
What's a mother to do?
Oh, what's a mother to do?
Close up David. He grabs another handful of Doritos, staring at the TV. Cut to exterior high school. Series of shots. Day. A cacophony of modern life. Beepers and nose rings. Blue hair and tattoos. Dissonant booms. Boomboxes compete with one another. The hormones are running crazy. School courtyard. It's a large open area, alive at lunchtime. Groups of kids hang out together, divided by their various cliques. The music pounds in the background. Close up David. He stands at one end of the courtyard beside the chain link fence. Beads of sweat form on David's forehead as he speaks to someone in front of him.
Hi. I mean, hi.
Reverse angle. A very pretty blonde girl smiles back at him. It's a warm, welcoming smile. Close up David.
Look, you probably don't think I should be asking you this. I mean, not knowing you well and all.
Reverse angle girl. She smiles wider at him, inviting him to continue. Close up David.
I mean, I know you. Everybody knows you. I just don't know you, technically.
Reverse angle girl. She nods at him. Close up David.
Well, I was just wondering, because I see you all the time in algebra, and I heard you humming that Van Halen song, and I really like that song too. Anyhow, I don't know what you're doing this weekend, but my mom's leaving town, and she said I could use her car, so...
Reverse angle girl. She positively beams. The girl flicks her blonde hair and stares back at him adoringly. Close up David. Instead of smiling back, David just stares, then looks at the ground. Wide angle schoolyard. For the first time, we see that she wasn't talking to him. David stands a good 100 yards across the schoolyard, rehearsing his speech, while the young woman stands face to face with a much cooler boy. He has a cell phone and a very hip haircut. Angle on David. David watches as the girl throws her arms around the boy's waist and heads out of the playground. Cut to exterior luncheon court day. David and his friends are all gathered around the plastic picnic tables and vending machines that form the luncheon court. The chess club meets at one end. There are some teachers at the other. All the cool kids are on the other side of the fence, but David and his friends eat lunch at the same table every day.
Okay, whose window did Bud break when he was playing with his father's golf clubs?
Easy, Mr. Jenkins. What job did Mr. Jenkins have?
Howard looks at him puzzled.
Salesman. What did Bud and Mary Sue name the cat they found in the gutter?
Scout?
Marmalade.
They all nod, all murmur with admiration.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one. Why did their parents come home early from their weekend at the lake?
Everybody thinks, but nobody knows.
Because Bud didn't answer the phone and they were worried about him.
It's quiet for a beat.
You're unbelievable. You'll win this thing for sure. When is it on?
Marathon starts at 6:30. Contest tomorrow at noon.
$1,000 and it's on all night.
Of course it is, Howard. That's why they call it a marathon.
To the other side of the fence, David's sister Jennifer hangs out with her friends in the parking lot. All the girls are dressed in the exact same uniform. Blue jeans, beeper on the belt, white V-neck t-shirt, car keys in their hand. Even the girls without a car hold the car keys for some reason. Jennifer is by far the prettiest and thus the leader of the group. They all look towards the luncheon court where David and his friends are hanging out.
Oh my God, it's so mortifying being related to him. Like, I can't believe you're like,
Only on my parents' side.
I know, but you're like twins and stuff. You must be like the cool side of the uterus.
A group of very hip boys strut through the parking lot. They bob up and down with the self-confidence of all cool 16-year-olds. The girls freeze when they see them.
Oh my God, here they come.
Don't do anything. Just like, don't do anything. Hi, Mark.
Different angle. He pauses, then looks over at her. Jennifer slides sinuously off the fender of the car, flicking her hair like a young racehorse. She has a perfect 16-year-old body, and the whole parking lot knows it. Mark heads over to her, followed by his lackeys. The two groups meet at the tailgate of the Nissan Pathfinder like a small summit conference.
Hey.
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 Hey,
Hey.
Hey.
Saw you at the mall yesterday.
Yeah, saw you too.
Everyone nods for a moment or two, but no one says anything.
So, you watching Pearl Jam on MTV tonight?
Yeah.
Jennifer pauses, weighing the next statement.
My mom will be out of town.
Kimmy and Kristen positively gasp while Mark's lackeys mumble and glance around. The import of the thing isn't lost on anybody. Mark bobs up and down a little faster.
So maybe we could
Cool.
Cool.
Everybody bobs and shuffles for a beat when Mark nods, summoning his flock. Cut to exterior Wagner house, dusk. It is a southwestern version of Leave It to Beaver. The uniformity of suburbia has been washed in earth tones. There's a red tile roof gracing every home. All the houses have the same anemic palm tree. It's urban planner's version of hell.
I know. He's just like so fine. I'm just like, oh my God.
Interior. It's just as sleek and impersonal as before, maybe more so at night. Jennifer crosses through the living room with the cordless phone attached to her ear.
It was amazing, Dad. I'm like, well, my mom will be out of town. And he's like, well, then maybe we could, And I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's like, well, cool. And well, I know he's just so smart. I don't know. Maybe like that black thing I just got. Well, I mean, it's not that slutty, Daff. It's cute. It's just in my head. It's not that slutty, Daff. It's cute. Well, hello. He's not coming over here to study. I know. Well, I'm jealous of you too sometimes.
Interior David's bedroom. It's studious and academic, not joyless, but not colorful either. David stands at his bedroom window, staring outside with a cordless phone in his hand.
He's not homeless, Howard. They just don't say where he lives. Well, it's a silly question. Because nobody's homeless in Pleasantville.
Reverse angle, his point of view. His mother loads the final Louis Vuitton bag into her Mercedes.
Because that's just not what it's like.
She fires up the car and pulls out of the driveway.
Listen, Howard, it's almost 6:30. I gotta go.
Interior living room. The huge black TV sits like a monolith in the middle of the room. All at once, David comes bundling down the stairs, making a beeline for the couch. Jennifer enters just as quickly from the other direction, fiddling with her clothes. Different angle. They hit the coffee table and reach for the remote control exactly the same moment. Both of them freeze, then look up at each other in shock.
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Neither one moves. They clutch the remote together.
David, cut it out. Mark Davis is going to be over here in just like 5 minutes.
Well, great. The Pleasantville Marathon starts at 6:30.
Pleasantville Marathon?
Yeah, every episode ever.
Oh my God. I don't believe this. He's going to be here in bye.
Well, great. You can watch TV upstairs.
Upstairs? Upstairs? There isn't any stereo.
Jennifer gets panicked and yanks at the remote. David yanks back, and before they know it, the remote goes flying out of their hands, crashing onto the hardwood floor. It smashes into a million tiny pieces.
Oh my God. Oh.
Well, David, stop stressing. You can turn it on normally.
No, you can't, Jen. It's a new TV. It doesn't work without a remote.
David cradles the pieces like a fallen comrade. Then the doorbell rings behind him.
Oh my God, he's here!
Jennifer sweeps some of the pieces frantically under the sofa and tries to adjust her outfit on the way to the door. David just stares in shock at the shattered plastic. Jennifer reaches the front door and wets her lips. She fluffs her hair quickly, sticks out her chest, and swings the door open. Different angle front door. Jennifer steps forward with her sexiest smile, but it isn't Mark Davis on the other side. Dick Van Dyke stands across the threshold in a TV repairman outfit. Jennifer looks at him, puzzled. He steps forward, flashing her a chipper grin, toolbox in hand.
TV repair?
TV repair?
Yeah, TV busted?
Yeah.
Well, here I am.
Reverse angle, David's point of view. He glances out the front door towards the weird van parked at the curb. It says TV repair on the side, but looks like something from a medicine show. The antenna on top resembles a weather vane, and the mural beneath it depicts a happy family from the 1950s, gathered around their TV set. Everyone wears a smile, including the dog. The hand-painted motto reads, Rob's TV Repair, we'll fix you for good. Interior living room. David looks back at Dick Van Dyke, who smiles at him, then crosses to the living room, stepping nimbly around the ottoman. He head towards the TV.
Holy cow, look at that. Had a little disaster, did you, fella?
Yeah, sort of.
Well, I'll get you fixed up in no time.
He pops the top of the toolbox while Jennifer and David just stare. It's a strange-looking box with the same happy family painted on the side. Dick Van Dyke pulls out another remote.
I know how I'd feel if mine went out. Almost like losing a friend.
You know, we didn't call any TV repair.
Well, that makes it a lucky day for both of us then, huh?
Jennifer shuts the door and crosses down towards the living room.
You think you could do this soon? It's almost 6:30.
What's the rush?
The Pleasantville Marathon starts at 6:30.
At that moment, there's a huge fork of lightning and a booming clap of thunder. It literally rattles the walls of the house as Dick Van Dyke turns towards David.
Pleasantville?
David recoils slightly. Dick Van Dyke flashes him a smile.
Gosh, I love that show. I watched it for years.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I'm just goofing it up. Yeah, that's not the reason. I've got a date at 6:30.
So, hey, who did Muff take into the muffin? Who's Muffin? Muffin take into the masquerade ball? Who's the Muff in? Who did Muffin take to the masquerade ball when her date came down with the measles?
Her father,
Right. How'd she dress him?
like Prince Charming.
Nice, nice. I feel like Jennifer's hitting the bottom.
Hello, I've got like a social emergency here. Like, I'm really watching the door and I'm freaking out.
Remember the one where Bud lost his cousin when he was supposed to be watching him?
Yeah,
What department store did they go to?
McIntyre's.
McGinty's.
No, McIntyre's. Remember? For the very best in men's attire, head right down to McIntyre's.
Mhm.
That's right.
Stares at David, speechless, for a moment, then smiles fondly and reaches beside him for his toolkit.
Say, why don't you take this remote instead? It's got a little more oomph in it.
Oomph.
Sure. Big, beautiful set like this, you want something that'll put you right in the show.
Yeah. Free? We'll take it.
Closer, he flashes them a big smile and holds out a weird-looking contraption that seems more primitive than space age. It's a strange combination of an early transistor radio and flash Gordon ray gun. Dick Van Dyke extends it with pride while Jennifer and David stare at him warily.
How much does it cost?
Oh, I couldn't charge you for something like that. It's free.
Free?
Oh, sure. Big fan like yourself. It's the least I could do.
There's a second clap of thunder, even louder than the first. The house rattles for a moment, then is quiet.
Well, I better get going. Your show is almost on, and it's almost time for your date.
He places the remote control gingerly on the coffee table and smiles at them. Dick starts across the living room when he suddenly catches his foot on the leg of the ottoman and tumbles it end over end, kind of like the show. He rolls on the carpet, executes perfect somersault, and comes right back to standing position. Wonder where Mary was for this. David and Jennifer stare at him, stunned, when he looks back at them and smiles.
Take care now.
There's another flash of lightning as he reaches for the doorknob. David and Jennifer look at one another while the front door shuts with a thud. It's quiet for a second or two before there's another clap of thunder. David cocks his head. Different angle, David glances down at the strange contraption sitting on the coffee table. It looks a little scary. Slowly, very slowly, he reaches down and touches it. Nothing seems to happen, so he picks it up. Closer. David points the remote towards the TV set with an apprehensive look on his face. He winces a little, then pushes one of the buttons. Different angle. The TV set turns on. Oprah's face fills the screen as angry housewife screams a transvestite.
Huh.
It all seems normal as he pushes another button. This time, the channel changes.
Great.
He continues to press the button, flipping through the channels. Jennifer sees that everything is fine and reaches for the remote.
Let me see that.
No way.
He continues to flip through the channels, coming to rest on the Pleasantville Marathon. Bud's voice fills the room.
Gee whiz, Mary Sue, why can't I borrow your transistor radio?
I promised Betty Jane she could use it over the weekend.
Full shot, TV set, Pleasantville, black and white. Bud and Mary Sue clutch either end of the small transistor radio. They seem to be in the exact same position as David and Jennifer, who are struggling over the remote control. Angle, David and Jennifer. She tugs the remote while David yanks in the other direction.
Do you mind? The most important moment of my whole life.
Forget it, Jen. I've waited a year for this.
But I told Mr. Miller I'd bring a transistor into electric shop.
And I told Betty Jean she could have it for the picnic with Roy.
God, David, just give it to me.
Get lost.
You get lost.
Wider, living room. She tugs at the remote, trying to wrestle it out of his hands. David pulls in the opposite direction and they point it directly towards the TV. Different angle, special effect. A huge white light emanates from the contraption like their own atomic blast wave. The entire room is filled with a blinding aura for a second or two before it actually gets sucked into the TV. Wide angle, living room. It's suddenly empty, illuminated only by the soft glow of the picture tube. David and Jennifer are nowhere in sight. Interior Parker living room, Pleasantville, day. David and Jennifer are standing in the middle of the 1950s living room, dressed in Bud and Mary Sue's clothing. They still clutch the remote control in the exact same position that was occupied by their fictional counterparts. David and Jennifer glance at one another, then look horrified around the room. The world has turned black and white.
Oh my God.
What happened?
I'm not sure.
Wider. George Parker, Bud and Mary Sue's father, enters from the landing whistling a happy tune. He's dressed in a gray suit with a gray shirt and a dark gray tie with little gray dots.
Hi, sport. Hi, Muffin. Better get a move on. You're gonna be late for school.
He continues to cross through the living room, whistling into the kitchen.
What did you do?
I don't know.
Look at me. I'm so pasty.
He glances down at the remote control that sits lifeless in his hands. David frantically presses the buttons, but nothing happens. All at once, there's a voice behind them.
Psst, over here.
Different angle. They whirl around and see Dick Van Dyke's face smiling at them from the TV set in the corner. It's an old 50s set with a big round picture tube. They run over to him and he smiles. His face is the only color in the room.
I told you it was your lucky day. Bet you thought I was just a fan or something. It's a miracle.
They stare stunned at the TV set.
See, every time I thought I'd found somebody, they'd turn out to disappoint me. They'd know the early episodes, but they wouldn't know the later ones. They'd know all about Muffin, but they wouldn't know about Bud.
What the hell's going on?
Shh, can't talk like that now. You're in, you know.
David glances around at his black and white surroundings. His mother's voice rings out from the kitchen.
Bud, Mary Sue, breakfast is on the table.
We're in Pleasantville?
Dream come true, right?
This isn't funny. I happen to have a very important date in like 5 minutes.
You don't have to worry about that anymore.
Full shot television set. All at once, the scene on TV changes and Dick Van Dyke's picture gives way to a wide angle shot of the Wagner house. Mark Davis is standing at the front door, banging at the brass knocker. He checks his watch, shifts restlessly for a moment or two, then turns and heads down the flagstone walk, never looking back.
Bitch.
Interior Parker living room, black and white again. Jennifer flings herself at the screen as Dick Van Dyke appears all over again.
No!
You've got to get us out of here.
Why would I do that?
Because we don't belong.
Oh, sure you do. McIntyre's department store, their father dressed as Prince Charming. That was gorgeous, Bud.
My name's David.
Oh, no!
You know, this is a pretty strange way of showing your appreciation.
Look, we appreciate it. We really do. We want to.
You don't know how long I've been looking for someone like you.
Long face slowly descends on him.
I'm very disappointed. In fact, I'm starting to get a little upset.
David moves towards the screen.
Don't get upset.
Well, wouldn't you? You look for someone for years, you pour your heart into it. This is a privilege, you know? I don't think I can talk about this right now.
Where are you going?
I don't think we should discuss this until I'm a bit more composed.
Oh, wait a minute.
No, maybe in a day or so when I'm not so emotional.
Come back.
Dick Van Dyke shakes his head and walks out of the shot as the screen goes completely black. It cuts out entirely as Jennifer and David just stare. David grabs the remote and starts rapidly pushing buttons, but nothing happens.
Oh, God.
What's gonna happen?
I don't know. It's not possible. Is it possible?
Bud, Mary Sue, your breakfast is getting cold.
It can't be possible.
Different angle. Betty, their mother, sticks her head into the living room, wearing her black and white apron. She has a great big Pepsodent smile.
Well, come on, kids. You're not going off to school without a hot breakfast inside you.
They just stare at her.
Forward march.
They exchange a strange little glance, then slowly rise to their feet. Jennifer waits for David, who forces a smile, then starts towards the kitchen.
Oh, I just love you in that sweater, Mary Sue. It's so flattering.
Thanks.
Interior kitchen. David and Jennifer walk 2 steps into the kitchen when they suddenly freeze, agape at the spectacle in front of them. Their point of view, Parker kitchen. Every breakfast food imaginable has been laid upon the table. There are hotcakes and sausages and biscuits and eggs and lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, pitchers of orange juice are dwarfed by the mountains of ham. The table literally sags under the weight of the food. George Parker lowers his morning paper and smiles at his children.
Morning, kids. Better get a move on or you're going to be late for school.
They nod, stunned, and wander forward into the room. Bright sunlight streams through the kitchen window as a gentle symphony of songbirds sings outside. David and Jennifer stare straight ahead as their mother adds some waffles to the heap.
I don't believe this.
Neither do I.
Well, come on, dig in.
David and Jennifer stare at her stunned as she puts 2 heaping plates at their places. Neither one moves.
Now, I put blueberries in them just the way you like.
Actually, I'm not real hungry.
Oh, nonsense, young lady. You're going to start your day off with a nice big breakfast.
She takes Jennifer by the shoulders and guides her into the chair. Jennifer looks down at the huge plate of gray waffles.
Here, why don't you have some waffle cakes? Oh, and there's sausage and eggs and some good crisp bacon and a ham steak.
Betty drenches the waffles in syrups and slathers on a huge slab of butter.
And of course, a nice big bowl of oatmeal.
Jennifer hesitates, then glances over at her mother, who looks at her expectantly. She glances at David, who looks stunned. Jennifer pauses, then reaches down and takes a forkful of the oozing mess. Cut to full shot Pat Boone. He stands facing the camera in an actual kinescope from 1958. The backdrop is a painted pastoral landscape and the background singers are all white debutantes. He wears a Letterman sweater and a button-down shirt.
Tutti frutti, oh Rudy. Tutti frutti, oh Rudy.
He continues his homogenized version of Little Richard's nasty hit, All the Nastiness Gone. It becomes a slow and lilting melody.
Tutti frutti, oh Rudy.
Series of shots, Pleasantville. The music continues as the camera cuts to image after image of this strange utopia. The effects is a weird sanitized version of MTV, as if Ronald Reagan had shot a music video. There are men tipping their hats and women walking their dogs, cheery gas station attendants, and smiling policemen.
A wop bop a loopa, a wop bam boom.
Pruned hedges, twin beds, big houses. The camera cranes down in the middle of the beautiful tree-lined street to find David and Jennifer walking up the sidewalk holding their stomachs.
Oh God, I'm gonna hurl David. I swear to God.
Just take deep breaths.
All that animal fat. I feel it in my pores or something.
Jennifer clutches her stomach, but David's glance darts from side to side, totally absorbed.
I still don't see why we're doing this.
We're supposed to be in school.
We're supposed to be at home, David. We're supposed to be in color. Oh God.
Man calls out from across the street.
Hello, bud.
Hello, Mr. Simpson.
Your dad's got a new car.
Oh, yeah. A Buick. It's swell.
Mhm.
You know him?
Owns a hardware store.
Okay, now you listen to me. I don't know what's going on here, but you better fix it. I had a date with Mark Davis, and I even bought new underwear.
We just got to play along for a little while till that guy shows up again. And then we'll talk to him and...
Play along.
Well, yeah. I'm Bud Parker, and you're Mary Sue.
No, I'm not going to do it. And if I don't dress like this for mom, I sure as hell ain't gonna do it for you.
We don't have a choice, Jen. We're stuck until he comes back.
Why can't we just explain it?
To who?
Jen looks around this cheery little street and the horror starts to dawn on her. At that moment, they hear a screaming siren and a bright gray fire engine comes racing up the block. Wider, Jennifer and David step back on the curb as the firemen come flying out of the truck, grabbing the ladder on the back. Different angle following the firemen. They work in perfect precision. 2 firemen grab the base of the ladder while the third takes the front. They go tearing across one of the lawns in full emergency response, anchoring the ladder into the ground and winging it up a tree.
Come here, kitty.
He emerges a moment later with the cat who's stuck in the tree. Jennifer sinks to the curb as he carries the kitten by them, petting it gently as he goes.
Oh, God. We're stuck in Nerveville. I always knew you'd pay a price for this. I knew you couldn't be hopelessly G-ridden for this long without suffering some like really tragic consequences. But it's like not fair. I mean, like, I'm starting to get like really popular. Debbie Russell transferring to like another school, and my skin's like been really great since March, and Mark Davis is starting to come around, and like it's just like all coming together.
Hello, Mary Sue.
Jennifer turns to see a strapping blonde 17-year-old driving by in his convertible. He's extremely handsome, with Jack Armstrong features and a Letterman sweater. Despite her crisis, Jennifer's jaw drops open as he slows to a crawl. Biff Martin flashes a huge Pepsodent smile, and the guy is a dreamboat.
What's all the commotion? Where's the cat?
It's...
Biff turns to see the fireman climb into the truck with the kitty in his arms.
Ah, right. Well, guess I'll see you later, Mary Sue.
He takes off down the street with the sun glinting on his really keen convertible. Jennifer gapes as he disappears around the corner.
Who's that?
Biff Martin, captain of the basketball team.
Does he, like me?
As a matter of fact, he does.
Huh.
Cut to exterior Pleasantville High School day. Streams of impeccably kept youngsters file through the double doors, all cheery and very pleasant looking. It looks like a Lenny Riefstahl movie, angled from across the street. David stands beside Jennifer looking at the entrance to the school. 3 girls huddle together by the front steps.
Those are my friends.
Peggy Jane, Lisa Ann, and Betty Jean.
Can we do better?
I don't think so.
Mary Sue, you're going to be late for geography.
Okay.
She flicks her hair back, cops a first day of school attitude, and heads across the street like she owns the place. Cut to interior geography class later. It looks like a propaganda film from the Eisenhower administration. The boys all wear crew cuts and short sleeve button-down shirts. The girls all have lacy dresses buttoned to the neck. Everyone stares straight ahead at the blackboard. Angle front of the room, teacher. Miss Peters stands in front of the class with a pointer in her hand. She indicates a diagram that spans the length of the blackboard.
Last week, class, we discussed the geography of Main Street. This week, we're going to be talking about Elm Street. Can anyone tell me one of the differences between Elm Street and Main Street? Tommy.
It's not as long.
Jennifer looks stunned as several students nod.
That's right, Tommy. It's not as long. Also, it only has houses. So the geography of Main Street is different than the geography of Elm Street.
Angle on Jennifer. She glances around at several students who seem to be nodding in agreement. All at once, she thrusts her hand into the air.
Mary Sue.
What's outside of Pleasantville?
The teacher looks at her with a puzzled, frozen smile on her face. She looks vaguely troubled.
What? I don't understand.
Outside of Pleasantville. What's at the end of Main Street?
The class lets out a knowing groan as if to say, "Oh, we get it now. Boy, what a stupid question." Miss Peters gives a kind of condescending look.
Oh, Mary Sue, you should know the answer to that. The end of Main Street is just the beginning again.
Miss Peters gives a big grin as a series of heads nod up and down. Jennifer stares straight ahead, dumbfounded. Cut to interior gymnasium day. There are 15 to 20 boys scattered around the gym. Each is dressed identically in white shorts and black socks with a Pleasantville jersey. Shot of David. He stands at the free throw line with a basketball in his hand. Not exactly an athletic image. David lets go of the jump shot that swishes effortlessly through the net, and he looks a little surprised.
Wow.
He stares at the backboard, slightly intrigued. David retrieves the ball and fires again, this time chucking it up blind. The ball sails through the hoop again, hitting nothing but net. Full shot, other side of the gym. 10 to 12 of his teammates fire simultaneously at the hoop. All of the shots sail through the hoop, none even nicking the rim. The boys retrieve their shots as the coach claps his hands.
That's it, man. Keep it up. Big game tomorrow.
Angle on David. He gets the ball and turns his back on the basket completely. David flings the ball wildly over his shoulder. It bounces off the walls of the gym, then glides through the net as smoothly as the others, and he stares in amazement.
Bud?
Wider. Biff Martin, the boy in the convertible, approaches from the other side of the gym. He's a classic all-American hero, somewhere between a 4-H club member and a future astronaut.
Hiya, Bud.
Hiya, Biff.
He fidgets nervously for a moment, looking down.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Well, if I was to ask your sister, what I mean is, if I was to go up to Mary Sue and...
Oh, God. Are we in that episode?
What?
I don't believe it.
What's the matter?
You want to ask her out tonight, right? And then you want to give her your school pin.
Yeah. How did you know?
Lucky guess. Look, Biff, I don't think it's the real good time right now.
Biff's expression falls. He stands crushed in front of David.
What I mean is, Mary Sue's been a little different lately.
She won't go out with me?
Well, I didn't say that. It's just that right now.
I don't know what I'd do if she wouldn't go out with me.
All at once, Biff takes the basketball he's been holding and hurls it towards the hoop. The ball goes a couple of revolutions of the rim and then amazingly pops out. Wide-angle gym. Play comes to a halt. All the players turn and stare, dumbstruck at the sight of a missed shot. Shot on David. He retrieves the ball quickly, then hurries back to Biff. David pulls him aside as play slowly resumes on the other side of the gym.
Look, I'm sure we'll work something out. I'll talk to her or something.
Biff looks at him troubled.
Honest, it'll be fine.
Biff nods, a little confused as David pats him on the back. Cut to interior corridor later. David stands off to the side with his sister while class pours out around them.
No way.
One date, Jen. That's all I'm asking. If you don't want to go with this guy, it could throw their whole universe out of whack.
It's too weird, David. This place is giving me the creeps. Did you know all the books are blank?
What?
I looked in the library. They got covers with nothing inside them.
What were you doing in the library?
I got lost. Oh, here, look at this.
She reaches into her purse and pulls out a book of matches. Jennifer tries to light the Kleenex on fire.
Jennifer!
Just watch. You know why those guys just get cats out of trees? Because nothing burns around here. That's why they don't need any firemen.
Sure enough, the tissue has become flame retardant.
Jen, listen.
I really need a cigarette too.
Look, I'll get us out of here. I really will. But if we don't play along and we could alter their whole existence, we may never get home.
She looks over at him slowly.
You really think anybody's gonna notice if I don't have a chocolate malt with this guy?
At that moment, 3 of Mary Sue's friends come tittering around the corner. They skitter up to her like a group of wind-up toys.
You won't believe what we just heard.
Biff, Martin's gonna ask you out. And that's not all.
No, that's
Oh
not
my
all.
God.
He's gonna
He's
give you
going
his
to give you his
pen.
They explode in a torrent of titters all over again. Jennifer looks over at David. That was a little scary. Exterior Parker House, dusk. A lone street lamp glows in the foreground. Jennifer's voice plays off screen.
Are you sure I'm supposed to wear this?
Interior Mary Sue's room. Jennifer emerges from the closet in a mohair sweater and a poodle skirt. Under the sweater, she wears a 1950s bullet bra that turns her breasts into lethal weapons.
I could like kill a guy with these things.
It's in your closet.
I mean, I've worn some kinky stuff before, but
He won't notice anyway.
what do you mean?
They don't notice that kind of thing.
So what's the point?
Jen, please.
Hello? I've got like 3 pounds of underwire here.
Just go with the program, huh? I'm late for work.
Cut to exterior soda shop, dusk. The flashing neon ice cream cone looks good enough to drink. Underneath it, the swirling script spells soda shop. Johnny Mathis drifts out into the evening air. Closer, David comes sprinting up to the screen door and pauses to get his breath. He adjusts a little soda jerk's hat, then plunges inside. Inside the shop, Mr. Johnson, the owner and proprietor, is wiping down the counter. He is a pleasant-looking man in his early 40s wearing a white apron and black glasses. The strains of Misty get louder as Bud lets the screen door slam behind him.
Bud.
Sorry, I had to help my folks and then I couldn't find my hat.
Oh,
He stops wiping for a moment, holding the towel in his hand.
I didn't know what to do.
He stares at the rag, a little troubled.
What's wrong?
Well, I always wipe down the counter, and then you set out the napkins and glasses, and then you make the French fries.
Yeah.
You didn't come, so I kept wiping.
He looks down at the towel, clearly disturbed, and David pauses for a moment but starts towards him.
I'm sorry.
He crosses to Mr. Johnson, who has polished one section of the counter right down to the wood. David takes the towel out of his hand and folds it neatly in front of him.
You know, if this ever happens again, you can make the fries even if I haven't put out the napkins yet.
I'm so glad you're here.
I understand.
Exterior Parker House, night. Biff's convertible rolls up to the curb with Pat Boone playing on the radio. He runs a comb through his short blonde hair before grabbing a bouquet of flowers next to him and heading up the walk. Biff rings the doorbell and, a moment later, Jennifer's silhouette appears in the doorway.
Well, maybe I've been stood up.
McFly!
Oh, Mary Sue.
Exterior soda shop night. The place is really hopping now. All the spots in the parking lot are filled with vintage jalopies, and several patrons are streaming through the door. The same Johnny Mathis song is still playing on the jukebox, and the neon ice cream soda sign blinks against the sky. Inside the shop, David is trapped behind the counter, furiously working to keep up with the load. Several clean-cut teenagers pepper with orders while he yanks at the pumps and spigots. It's clear he isn't used to this.
Peppermint shake, chocolate soda. Yeah, two orders of fries and a split.
Peppermint soda, 2 chocolate shakes, order of fries, and we'll split it.
David nods quickly, wiping some sweat from his brow. He scoops some ice cream into the metal blender as Mr. Johnson comes up beside him.
There aren't any cheeseburgers.
What?
Well, usually I put out the burger and then you finish with the lettuce.
Listen to me. Do you
Mr.
have
Johnson
lettuce?
recoils.
Do you have the lettuce?
Yeah.
Do you have the burgers?
Yes.
Well, you can just put on the lettuce, finish the burger, and pretend it was me doing it all along. Really?
Mr. Johnson stares at him.
It's fine.
Different angle, soda shop entrance. The screen door swings open and is held there by the end of the Letterman sweater. A moment later, Jennifer sachets through, parading her new Jane Russell profile. Her girlfriends titter from the corner as Biff rushes up to a table and pulls out a chair. She sachets into it, brushing against him as she does. Angle on David. He stares motionless at the spectacle, concerned and apprehensive. David holds a hot fudge sundae under the soda spigot and jerks back the lever, blowing ice cream all over his chest. Full shot table. Biff stares across the table at Jennifer with the wholesome devotion of a Labrador retriever. He looks like a cross between Troy Donahue and a mannequin.
I sure am glad you said you'd come out with me tonight, Mary Sue.
Well, gee whiz, Biff. I sure am glad you asked me.
He guffaws for a moment or two before speaking again.
I don't know if I've ever said this to you before, but, well, I think you're just about the keenest girl in the whole school.
Really, Biff? The keenest?
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, I hardly know what to say.
What can I get you to?
Wider. He stands at their table holding a little white pad of paper and pencil. Jennifer looks up at her brother and almost bursts out laughing. He wears his soda jerk hat and jaunty angle with large apron tied around his neck.
Oh, I don't know, bud. Guess I'll have my usual cheeseburger and a cherry Coke.
More goony laughs. David turns to Jennifer, who puts on some dopey countenance.
Oh, I don't know, bud. Guess I'll just have a salad and an Evian water.
He shoots her a dirty look. Jennifer just smiles at him.
Cheeseburger it is.
Angle following David. He glowers at her all the way back to the counter. David posts and orders the little carousel clipboard, keeping an eye on the table the entire time. Resume table. Biff grazes across the table at Jennifer with an adoring look on his face. His hands are properly folded in front of him. She's still trying to do her best, Mary Sue.
See, the whole time we were in civics together, I really wanted to sit next to you, but you were always sitting between Peggy Jane and Lisa Ann.
There's something tittering behind it. What is with the tittering? Jennifer doesn't respond.
And you always seemed so smart and everything. Like that report you did on our town hall. Gosh, I didn't know what I'd talk to you about.
Well, sometimes talking's overrated, don't you think?
Huh? Oh, right.
He still doesn't understand. He guffaws for a moment or two, then glances at the tabletop. There's a momentary break in the music as Johnny Mathis' Misty starts up all over again. It's enough to make you shoot yourself.
So I know I haven't been steady with anybody, but I just don't want to rush it. You don't want to make a mistake with something that important.
Oh gosh, no.
I mean, there's kids that are even holding hands already, but I figure there's plenty of time for that kind of thing later on. Don't you?
Oh, you bet. Will you excuse me for a sec?
Jennifer gets up in a daze and heads towards the bathroom. Angle on David. He freezes behind the counter and watches his sister practically stumble through the bathroom door. In the bathroom, of course, there aren't any toilets. Jennifer gropes her way to the sink and leans against the counter. She turns and sits against the sink for a moment with this dumbstruck look on her face. Jennifer shakes her head for a moment or two when the door to the bathroom bursts open.
Did he give it to you?
Did he give it to you?
I bet he
Oh my
gave it to
God.
you. Oh my gosh, I didn't think he knows how.
I bet he's gonna take her to Lover's Lane.
Oh my God. I bet he's even gonna hold her hand.
They titter some more as Jennifer shakes her head. In the soda shop, David is standing beside their table as she returns from the bathroom.
Couple of cheeseburgers and 2 cherry Cokes. If you need anything, I'll be right over there.
Gee whiz, bud. What could we possibly need when we have each other?
She flashes him a sweet smile that reaches out and touches Biff's hand. Both boys jump slightly as Jennifer gives her brother a venomous grin, then suddenly waves bye-bye. David just stares at her, panicked, as he moves haltingly back to the soda fountain.
Anyhow, I really wanted to come over and sit next to you in civics, but
You want to
I-
get out of
I-
here?
what?
You want to get out of here? You want to leave?
But where would we go?
Lover's Lane.
Lover's Lane?
There's an audible gasp from the booth behind them, and Jennifer ignores it.
Yeah, Lover's Lane. You up for it?
Close up on Biff. He just stares at her with his mouth open, wider. Jennifer reaches forward, grabbing his hand.
Come on. Let's go.
Full shot soda fountain. David's in the middle of making a hot fudge sundae when he sees Jennifer leading Biff by the hand into the parking lot. Everyone at the counter is enjoying their dessert when David lets out a blood-curdling scream.
No!
He vaults over the counter, making a beeline for the door. Everyone turns and stares as he races towards the entrance. Exterior soda shop. Biff's car is just pulling onto the street when David sprints into the parking lot. He takes off after the car, sprinting down the street.
You can't do this, Jennifer. He doesn't exist. You can't do this to someone who doesn't exist.
The taillights recede in the distance as David slows to a jog and then finally a walk. He pauses, winded, in the street, then looks up towards heaven with a pissed off look on his face.
Thanks a lot.
Cut to exterior Lover's Lane. It's a beautiful tree-lined pond with a lush willow tree in the foreground. The moonlight glistens silver across the water. Several cars are parked in a row with their occupants holding hands. Biff's convertible is parked at the end. Shot of Biff's car. He sits stiffly at the wheel, staring straight ahead. Jennifer is draped languidly across the seat beside him, making the most of her mohair sweater. She stares at Biff on a not-so-Pleasantville kind of way. He glances over at her and swallows.
Sure is pretty.
Oh, yeah. Gorgeous.
To be honest, Mary Sue, I didn't think you'd want to come here until we'd been pinned for a little while.
Oh, Biff. You can pin me anytime you want to.
She leans back a little more, draping her arm across the top of the seat. Her tits point towards the sky.
Or maybe I should just pin you.
He looks over at her a little confused, then breaks into his goony laugh.
Oh, that's silly, Mary Sue. How could you possibly pin me?
Close up on Biff. He's still guffawing when he looks over at Jennifer and suddenly freezes. His eyes widen. Cut to exterior Parker house. David comes sprinting up the porch, then doubles over, catching his breath. He clings to the porch swing when the door opens behind him.
Bud?
Wider. His mother and father come out on the porch. David catches his breath and forces a smile.
Fun? What's wrong?
Have you seen Mary Sue?
Oh, why no, she's still on her date with Biff. Is something the matter?
No, I was just worried about her.
Mother and father exchange a knowing look. George rests his hand on his shoulder.
Bud, your sister's a little older now, and she's naturally going to start going out with boys. In fact, pretty soon, she's even going to get married and make someone a good little homemaker, like your mother here. Oh, God, I butchered that. That's if she can learn to bake.
Oh, George.
But your sister's a fine young woman, and she would never do anything for us to be concerned about.
Cut to exterior Lover's Lane. The low guttural moans of two coupling animals drifts out over the evening air. It's raw and primitive and desperate. The camera begins to track behind all the other cars, their occupants primly holding hands in a tender silhouette. It finally comes to rest on a convertible at the end with a girl's legs sticking out the window. Closer. A Letterman sweater hangs over the door. The windshield is completely fogged and Jennifer's sweater is draped over the back seat. The car is a rockin'. In the car, they're clenched in a mad embrace, all arms and hair. Biff pulls back for a moment, gasping for air. His face is covered with lipstick and there's a crazy look in his eye. He's stuck somewhere between passion and fear as he clings desperately to the steering wheel.
I think I better go home now, Mary Sue.
She holds onto his shirt as her knee rubs the dashboard.
Why?
I think I might be ill.
He glances down at his lap, a little confused.
I think something's happening to me.
He looks at his crotch, then back at Jennifer. She reaches up and grabs a handful of his hair.
That's supposed to happen, Biff.
It is?
Trust me.
He looks at her completely confused as she pulls back down and out of frame. Cut to exterior Parker house. A single light is burning in the kitchen window.
You want some more cookies?
In the kitchen, David's at the table with a nauseated look on his face. There are 3 empty bottles of milk and cookie crumbs all over the table.
Oh no, I'm fine.
How about some marshmallow rice squares?
I'm fine.
There's a knock behind them at the door, and David springs up.
Now, who could that be?
Following David, he crosses to the foyer ahead of his parents. David swings open the door, revealing Mr. Johnson standing in the porch.
Oh, hi.
Hi there. You took off so quick. I wasn't sure if you were okay.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm fine. I had to go home early.
Mr. Johnson leans in closer and speaks in a confidential tone of voice.
Bud,
Yeah.
you know how when we close up, I close the register and then you lower the shades and then I turn out the lights and then we both lock the doors?
Yeah.
Well, you weren't around this time. So I did the whole thing myself.
Closer. Mr. Johnson has a strange look of manly pride on his face. His shoulders square back, his chest puffs out a little, and there's a sudden sparkle in his eye.
Not only that, I didn't even do it in the same order. See, first, I lower the shades, and then I close the register.
He looks at David with pride, then suddenly shifts his glance behind him.
Oh, hello, Betty.
Hello, Bill.
Neither one says anything, but neither one has to. David looks on in horror as his mother locks eyes with Mr. Johnson in his newly found virility.
Well, look, thanks for coming by. I really appreciate it.
He turns and starts hustling him down the walk just as Biff's convertible pulls up at the curb. In the car, close up, Jennifer. She looks sweetly over at the driver's side of the car, out of frame.
Well, gee, thanks, Biff. I had a really wonderful time.
Angle on Biff, other side of the car. He sits behind the wheel with a totally dazed look on his face. Biff stares stunned at Jennifer like he just got hit with a couple thousand volts.
Me too.
She leans over and kisses him on the cheek, then she bites his earlobe, gently, and flashes him a big smile. Biff smiles back. She climbs out and shuts the door. Jennifer nods to Mr. Johnson as she heads up the walk.
Hello, Mr. Johnson.
Oh, hello, Mary Sue.
She's wearing a big smile by the time she reaches the porch, and David grabs her arm.
What did you do to him?
Nothing.
She starts up the staircase, and David follows her, and the camera follows both.
What do you mean, nothing? That's not nothing. That's...
She reaches the top of the stairs and turns to him.
Relax, bud. We had a really nice time. Oh, now I'm just really tired. And we got to get up really early for school in the morning, so...
She flashes her brother an evil grin.
Night.
She shuts the door softly in his face. David stares at the gray wood in front of him. Exterior Elm Street. Biff pulls up in the intersection, the same dazed look in his eye. The car rumbles to the spotlight for a moment or two before he glances over to his right. Close up Biff. The stunned look turns to one of sheer amazement. Biff's point of view, Rose, there against the gray picket fence on a black and white street in a black and white neighborhood, a single red rose is blooming. Cut to aerial shot, Pleasantville morning. It would be a stunning vista if it wasn't in black and white. The church steeple gleams in the sunlight. The perfect little houses look like a row of pretty toys. In the Parker living room, David sits parked in front of the TV, furtively turning through the channels. He flips the dial frantically. No sign of Dick Van Dyke.
Bud, it's 7:30 in the morning. Are you watching television?
He gives her a sheepish grin and sighs. Cut to interior school gym day. It's the same configuration as earlier. Everyone wears their Pleasantville Lions jersey, white sneakers and black socks. David enters the gym a little groggy. He hasn't had much sleep. He looks up and stops. David cocks his head to the side, staring across the gym. His point of view, Biff and other boys. They're huddled at the far end, each holding a basketball under his arm. Biff's in the center of the group, animatedly describing something that's holding their rapt attention. Wider angle, including David.
Oh no.
Biff continues his story while they stare at him with their mouths open. The coach blows his whistle.
Come on, man, let's go. Big game next week.
The huddle breaks up as the basketball players all wander towards the hoop. 10 shots go up at once, but not one comes even close. Several clang off the rim. A couple hit the edge of the blackboard. One slams to the side of the gym, and everyone stares in disbelief.
Oh my God.
Cut to interior corridors. David stands face to face with his sister mid-conversation.
You can't do this, Jennifer. I warned you.
Well, so what's the big deal, okay? Like, so they're not good at basketball. Big deal. Like, oh my God, what a tragedy.
You don't understand. You're messing with their universe.
Well, maybe it needs to be messed with. Did that ever like occur to you? You know, they don't want to be like this. It's just like nobody ever helped them before.
MS, how you doing?
Cool, PJ. How you doing?
Cool.
Jennifer smiles at her friend as she goes by.
You have no right to do this.
Well, if I don't, who will?
They're happy like this.
David, nobody's happy in a poodle skirt and a sweater set. You like all this, don't you?
David recoils slightly.
I mean, you don't think it's just like dorky or funny or something. You really like this. Oh God, am I just so personally horrified right now? Oh
I just don't think we have the right to.
no. David, just let me tell you something. These people don't want to be geeks. They want to be attractive. They've got a lot of potential. They just don't know any better.
They don't have that kind of potential.
Hello? You want to just take a look?
Jennifer motions behind her to a boy and a girl who are locked in an intimate conversation. The girl wears bobby socks and the boy wears a Letterman sweater, but the conversation is sexually charged. They speak to one another in a close whisper, their faces inches apart. All at once, the girl gets shy and glances away. She blows a big bubble with her gum, but the bubble is bright pink in an otherwise gray frame.
Wow, what kind of gum is that?
Close on David and Jennifer. He looks over in shock as she sucks the brightly covered bubblegum back in her mouth, and Jennifer flicks her hair.
I gotta go. I'm meeting Biff at the flagpole.
Exterior Lover's Lane. It's the exact same shot as before. The camera starts its long, slow track behind the vehicles, except this time all of them are rocking. Various limbs and articles of clothing hang out the windows. Moans of pleasure waft out of the Lover's Lane as the pond glistens in the distance. Cut to interior doctor's office, day. It's a typical 50s family practice right out of Norman Rockwell. There's a jar of tongue depressors on the counter and a jar of lollipops beside them. Lisa Ann, Mary Sue's best friend, is being examined by Dr. Henderson. Her mother sits at her side.
Let me see it again.
Lisa Ann opens her mouth and sticks out a bright red tongue. Everything else in frame is black and white, but her tongue literally gleams with color.
Well, I don't think it's anything to worry about. It'll probably just clear up by itself. Cut down on greasy foods and chocolate, no French fries, that kind of thing. It's just a teenage thing.
Exterior Lover's Lane. It's really rocking now. More cars are lined up along the edge of the lake as the real and nasty version of the Tutti Frutti by Little Richard plays off screen.
Wop, bop, a loop, bop, a wop, bam, boom.
Series of shots, montage. Parker living room. Tutti Frutti continues as David flips frantically through the channels looking for Dick Van Dyke. There's only one Pepsodent commercial. He shakes his head. In the high school gym, the music continues. Pleasantville Lions lose a game late in the second half. Scoreboard reads 84-16. In the living room, David examines the back of the TV set. In a furniture store, a large group of customers huddled in a circle, staring at an item on the display floor like the monolith in 2001. They seem both confused and absolutely mesmerized as the camera pushes in to reveal a double bed. In the living room, David sits on the floor with a weird look of resignation as the Brill Cream commercial plays in front of him.
A wop bop a loop bop a wop bam boom.
Soda shop, night on David. He heads towards work with his apron and his paper hat, but he's clearly disconcerted. David stops and stares at a bright red hot rod parked at the front door of the restaurant. He shakes his head. Soda shop. The place has been transformed. What was cheery and benign a couple of days before has gotten a little bit dangerous. The Letterman sweaters have been replaced by leather jackets. The Pat Boone and Johnny Mathis have given way to real rock and roll. There's a James Dean, Marlon Brando edge in the air. Somebody has played the flip side. Angle on David. He enters the soda shop adjusting his paper hat. A young couple makes out passionately in the doorway, all tongues and hands. When they break, David sees the girl's cheeks are flushed with red. He stares at her for a beat as they return to normal. David shakes his head. Following him, he crosses to the counter and grabs his pencil and little pad of paper. Various things have already gone to color around the room. The jukebox, the Coke sign, the non-hide stools. David crosses to one of the booths where his sister's arm is draped over Biff's shoulder.
What'll it be?
Gee whiz, bud. Guess I'll just have the usual. Cheeseburger and a cherry Coke.
Bud has already written it down. He glances over at his sister.
2. Sounds swell.
Really? Seems so fattening.
Before she can answer, he smiles to himself and crosses behind the counter. Bud posts the order and turns to Mr. Johnson.
2 cheeseburgers, 2 cherry Cokes.
There aren't any cheeseburgers.
Look, I thought we talked about this. I thought we said...
What's the point, bud?
Closer on Mr. Johnson. He looks up at him with a weird kind of emptiness in his eyes, and David grabs his arm.
Come here.
He pulls him along the counter toward the little office storeroom in the back. He yanks him inside and shuts the door. It's all as cheery as the rest of the place. There's a small table with a telephone on it. The Texaco calendar shows a happy family motoring in their Rambler.
What did you say?
Mr. Johnson glances down with a little shame and confusion.
I'm not sure I see the point anymore.
What are you talking about? You make hamburgers. That is the point.
No, I know. I know I do. But it's always the same, you know? Grill the bun, flip the meat, melt the cheese. It never changes. It never gets any better or worse.
Just listen to me.
But it's not like the other night when I closed it by myself. That was different.
Well, forget about that.
Oh, okay. But I really liked it.
Bud takes a deep breath. He stares at Mr. Johnson, then tries to speak softly.
Look, you can't always like what you do. Sometimes you just do it because it's your job. And even if you don't like it, you just got to do it anyways.
Why?
So they can have their hamburgers.
This sounds stupid even to David, and he shakes his head.
You know what I really like?
What's that?
Christmas time.
David rolls his eyes. Mr. Johnson leans closer, speaking furtively.
See, every year on December 3rd, I get to paint the Christmas decorations in the window. And every year, I get to paint a different thing. You see, one year it's the North Pole. The next, I do Santa's workshop. Here, I'll show you.
He pulls a photo album from the back of the desk and opens it for David.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Thanks. But this morning I was thinking about it and I realized that I look forward to it all year. And I thought, gee, that seems awfully silly. That seems like an awfully long time to be waiting for just one moment, don't you think?
David looks at him speechless.
Well, don't you?
I think you should try not to think about this anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll try that then.
Cut to interior barbershop day. The barber pole spins in 3 shades of gray. Several men are gathered around the 2 chairs in the front of Gus's shop. Besides being a barbershop, it's the bastion of all male life in Pleasantville. Bud and Mary Sue's father, George, sits in one of the chairs. Big Bob McGee, owner of the drugstore, supermarket, and Chevy dealership, sits in the other. He has a crew cut that's getting shorter.
Have they ever lost before?
Basketball? No, they sure haven't.
This feels wrong, that's all.
There are several murmurs.
Well, they can't win them all.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ralph. Maybe they do have that saying.
But they do win them all, Gus. They've always won them all.
Well, yeah, that's true too.
More murmurs. Everyone looks straight ahead, trying to figure. Cut to interior Parker kitchen day. The Women's Bridge Club has assembled in the Parker kitchen like it does every Wednesday afternoon. 4 women are seated around the kitchen table with a nice bowl of bridge mix between them. Betty is sitting next to Marge Jenkins, the woman who accompanied her daughter to the doctor's office.
He said it would clear up on its own if he just stayed away from fried foods and sweets.
Well, that makes sense.
Except it's spread to her lips now too. Oh, I don't know.
You say it's just red.
Well, like red, only redder.
Huh. I know what you mean. It's at the front of Bill Johnson's shop. I was going by the other day and it looked green, only greener.
Shouted Betty. She looks up quickly, then grabs some bridge mix.
Have you seen him lately? The man doesn't look like himself. I was getting my sewing machine fixed across the street, and he was sitting in the window of his shop, just staring. Wasn't looking at anything in particular, just staring off into space, you know.
That is strange.
Betty reaches out and grabs her cards. She fans them out in front of her when her eyes go wide. Her point of view, bridge hand. They're all hearts and all bright red. It looks like a fistful of valentines. Close on Betty. She puts the cards down quickly and takes a sudden breath. Betty keeps them like that for a moment or two before lifting them up and taking another look.
Betty, it's your bid.
She swallows, trying to keep her composure.
7 of hearts.
The murmur at the strength of the hand. Cut to exterior house night. The sound of the television plays off screen while a warm light burns in the window. In the kitchen, Jennifer and Betty stand in the sink finishing the dishes. Betty washes while Jennifer dries, and it's clear more used to this. Jennifer examines a chipped nail as she places a dish in the drying rack.
Mary Sue.
Yeah?
Betty hesitates and rinses out a pot.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure. She pauses for a long moment.
What goes up at Lover's Lane?
What do you mean?
Well, you hear all these things lately, you know, spending so much time up there. Is it holding hands? That kind of thing?
Yeah. That and
She stops herself.
What?
it doesn't matter.
No, I want to know. Ah,
Betty nods from the import of the tone, but not the meaning. A beat goes by.
what's sex?
Jennifer looks over at her stunned, but Betty just looks at her with a blank, curious expression. Jennifer hesitates.
You sure you want to know this?
Yes.
Okay.
She crosses to the kitchen door and closes it. The sounds of the TV in the living room disappear. Jennifer crosses back to the kitchen counter and turns to her.
You see, Mom, when two people like each other very much.
Betty looks at her and nods. Dissolve to exterior Parker house. The TV keeps flickering in the window. In the kitchen, later, the camera pans across the table where there is a full quart of milk and some uneaten cookies. It finally comes to rest on Jennifer, who's staring across the kitchen table with a concerned look on her face.
You okay?
Reverse angle, Betty. She nods, shaken but fine. Betty stares long and hard at the plate of chocolate chip cookies. She's far away.
Yes. It's just that.
What?
Well, your father would never do anything like that.
Shot at Jennifer. She bites her lip, weighing her next sentence.
Well, Mom, there's ways to enjoy yourself without Dad.
Angle on Betty. She looks across the table, perplexed. Cut to interior Parker bedroom. George crosses from the dresser. Cut to interior Parker bedroom. George crosses from the dresser to the two twin beds in the middle of the room. He wears a long sleeve pajamas that are buttoned up to his neck. George puts his glass of warm milk on the nightstand and climbs into his own single bed. It's barely wide enough for his body and takes some maneuvering.
Sweetie, you coming to bed?
There's no answer.
Betty?
Interior bathroom. She stands in her bathrobe, staring down at the tub. Her dressing gown is buttoned to the neck as well.
I'm just gonna take a bath first.
Closer on Betty. She swallows once as she stares down at the tub, then reaches for the spigot and turns on the water. Betty's heart beats a little faster as she hears the water thundering down. Closer still, she reaches up and unties the little sink ribbon at the top of her robe. She slips it off and lets it drop to the floor, standing naked in the middle of the bathroom. Betty glances towards the mirror and quickly glances away. She takes a deep breath and steps into the tub. I love you, Anne. Even tighter on her face, Betty slides down the warm water, breathing in the steam and closing her eyes for a moment. She lingers like that for a second or two before settling a little lower in the tub. Betty opens her eyes, but they only half open. There's the slight trace of a smile. Extreme close-up of Betty's face. Her eyes close again as she bites her lower lip gently. The water continues to thunder down as she arches her back. Betty's breathing seems to quicken as she opens her eyes all over again. Her point of view in the bathroom, all at once. Everything around her starts to turn from black to white to color. The bird out the window becomes a red-breasted robin. The tile on the tub turns out to be purple. Green towel, pink robe, bright yellow daisies on the plastic shower curtain. Close-up of Betty's face. She stares in amazement. Beads of sweat on her forehead as the world goes to Technicolor. The thundering water pounds in the background, but beneath can be heard the beginnings of a faint, low moan. Her eyes dart around the room. Her breathing quickens faster, harder, more intense. Then suddenly, exterior Elm Street night. The huge elm tree across the street suddenly bursts into flames. Fire shoots straight up into the sky as billowing clouds of black smoke fill the air. Bright orange flames light up the night. In the living room, David is staring at the television set when he notices a weird orange glow. He glances behind him out the living room window.
Oh my God.
Exterior Elm Street. David comes racing out the front door and down the walk. A small crowd has gathered in the front of the fire. They don't seem frightened, just sort of amazed. The street is still black and white, but it's now bathed in a weird orange light. The flames leap higher and higher.
Jesus Christ.
Following David, he takes off down the block as fast as he can run. The crowd continues to stare as David turns the corner at Main Street. Exterior fire station. He races up the front of the building, screaming at the top of his lungs.
Fire! Fire!
In the station, there's no sign of life on the ground floor. David races up the stairs towards the bunk on the second story. In the bunk room, all the firemen are sitting around playing gin rummy when David rushes in the front door. They can hear his
Fire!
voice from down the hall.
Fire! Fire!
They still don't move. All the firemen just look at him from their bunks with a perplexed expression.
Cat?
All at once, they spring to their feet, grabbing their helmets and their yellow slickers. They race down the landing to the outside of the bunk room and leap onto the pole. Exterior Main Street. The fire has spread to an adjoining tree, and the fire engine comes screaming towards the house from the top of the block. David sits in the front of the truck next to the fire chief, who drives the vehicle at breakneck speed.
Right here.
The fire engine screeches to a halt. The fire chief looks around.
Where is it?
Of course it's Travis. David shoots him a look, then glances at the inferno. He shakes his head and leaps from the truck. Following David, he races around the back where the other firemen are standing just as confused. David grabs one of the hoses and begins to pull it from the truck.
Here, grab this nozzle.
But where's the...
Just grab it.
He strips out about 15 feet of hose, then grabs this fireman and pulls him towards the curb. David parts the crowd and positions the man right in front of the flames.
Okay, now point this right up at the flames, like this.
The fireman nods and does as he's told. David opens the valve, sending out a huge fume of water.
Whoa! So that's what these do.
A huge smile breaks out across the fireman's face, like a man who's suddenly found his purpose in life. He beams from ear to ear, dousing the flames, while David runs to get another house.
In honor and in recognition of your heroism.
Dissolve 2, exterior town hall day. David stands at a podium receiving a commendation from Big Bob McGee, the man from the barbershop. He holds a large plaque up for public display while David's whole family beams in the background.
And with great appreciation from the citizens of Pleasantville.
Wider, the huge crowd is gathered on the town hall steps. There are lots of balloons and bunting.
I'm pleased to present you with this special commendation from the Pleasantville Chamber of Commerce.
He hands the plaque to David as the entire town bursts into applause. Cut to exterior Main Street later. David walks away from the center of town looking down at his plaque. He takes his sleeve and starts to rub off a smudge when a young woman comes up beside him.
That's you.
Hi, bud. Wider. She's Margaret Ann Henderson, the prettiest girl in school, and one of the most popular. Margaret wears a frilly polka dot dress that only accentuates a bombshell's 50s figure. Nonetheless, she seems the image of girly innocence. That sure was swell.
Oh, thanks, Margaret.
I baked you my oatmeal cookies.
Oh. No, you baked those for Whitey.
No, I baked them for you.
No, you baked them for Whitey.
No, I baked them for you. All at once, Margaret grabs his arm and pressures herself against him. Her breasts shove up against his chest. Her mouth is inches away from his.
Thanks.
David can smell the weird combination of hot, moist breath and freshly baked cookies. He stares into her eyes for a moment, unable to speak. Margaret flashes him a not-so-Pleasantville smile. See ya! She turns and heads around the corner while David just watches her dumbstruck. Cut to soda shop dusk. David heads towards work with his apron and little paper hat. The Buddy Holly music has given way to hip 50s jazz. Dave Brubeck drifts out the soda shop as David pauses for a moment, takes a bite of his oatmeal cookie, and heads inside. Soda shop. The place has morphed even more. If it was a teenage hangout before, it has become almost a bohemian coffee house now. Take 5 plays in the background while several patrons talk intensely in their booths. Doorway. David walks into the building and pauses. Next to him, one of the boys from the basketball team plays along with the jazz on a bongo drum. There are several coffee cups on the table, and Jennifer gets up quickly and comes over to him.
I had nothing to do with that fire.
It's okay.
Not directly, anyhow.
Fine.
David glances at the booth beside them and realizes that the bongos have stopped playing. All the kids are staring up at him with a weird expression of awe.
I feel like when I ask you a question, I didn't know how to handle it, so...
Sure.
He crosses to the booth where Biff and 2 others look up at him. It's like Elvis has entered the building.
How are you doing?
Swell.
They keep on staring. Several glances are exchanged back and forth like they're sharing a secret. And finally,
How'd you know about the fire?
What?
How'd you know about how to put it out and all?
David hesitates, weighing his words.
Well, where I used to live, that's just what firemen did.
This sends a murmur through the shop. The boy leans forward.
And where's that?
Outside of Pleasantville.
This sends a much louder murmur rifling through the kids. It's like electricity. They glance excited at one another. A hush descends.
What's outside of Pleasantville?
Look, it doesn't matter. It's not important.
What is it?
David stops and looks out at the kids who are hanging on every word.
It's really not important.
What's outside of Pleasantville?
Reverse angle, including doorway. Margaret Henderson, the girl with the cookies, stands in the doorway staring at David. She hangs on his words with the same excitement as the others. It just means so much more. Come on, tell us. She stares right in his eyes. She's 10 feet away, but might as well be touching him.
Well, there are some places where the road doesn't go in a circle. There are some places where it keeps going.
There's an excited giggle. They lean forward. Keeps going.
Well, it all just keeps going. Roads, rivers. Rivers, especially.
Like the mighty Mississippi?
What?
He moves forward, extending a book. The cover reads, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. David opens the first page. There's printing inside.
It was big and brown and kept going as far as you could see.
I thought the books were blank.
They were.
He looks over at her.
Okay, look, this wasn't my fault. They asked me what it was about and I didn't remember because we had it back in 10th grade, but I told them what I did remember, and the next thing I knew, the pages had been filled in.
Pages filled in?
But only up to the part about the raft because I didn't read any further.
David flips through the book, and sure enough, only the first chapter has print. The pages are blank after that.
Do you know how it ends?
Well, yeah, I do.
So how does it end? She's moved closer and is gazing at him from a couple feet away. It's silent in the soda shop.
Well, see, they're both running away, Huck and the slave, and they go up the river. But in trying to get free, they sort of see that they're free already.
David looks immediately down the blank pages of the book that aren't blank anymore. Rows and rows of fresh new type materialize in front of him. He turns to the back of the book that's complete with a color illustration.
Oh my God.
Do you know this one?
He shoves another book in front of David.
Huh? Oh, yeah, well, this is great. You see, Holden Caulfield is like this really lonely kid.
Exterior Pleasantville Public Library. The camera pans down from the public library sign to find the front door. A long line of kids waiting to check out their books stretches onto the sidewalk. Extreme wide shot, library from across the street. Several men from the barbershop lean against the wall next to the spinning barber pole. They watch the spectacle for a moment or two as teenager after teenager exits with an armful of books.
I don't know, Phil. It's pretty strange.
I'll say strange, and it's getting stranger.
Big Bob McGee nods and rubs his hands over his fresh haircut.
I mean, going up to that lake all the time is one thing, but now they're going to a library? I mean, what's next?
Ought to be having an ice cream soda, but that's where they ought to be.
Quieter still, from the shadows of the town hall up the block, David watches the stream of kids emerge with their books. They cradle them in their hands like a piece of newfound treasure. Interior Parker living room, night. George sits on the edge of his Barca lounger across the coffee table from Big Mom McGee. Even sitting down, the man is a looming presence. Besides owning the market, auto dealership, hardware store, and gas station, he also owns the insurance agency where George works. George sweats into his collar.
Want some bridge mix?
Oh, no thanks.
Betty's making some pineapple kebabs.
I'm fine, but thank you.
George nods as Bob takes a belt of his martini and leans forward.
George, you're probably wondering why I asked if I could come over today.
George shrugs, then nods, then shrugs.
I'm sure you've noticed the same things we all have. Certain changes going on in the town. Do you know what I mean by changes?
Changes.
Changes. And it's not just the fire or big stuff like that. It's little things. Did you hear about Bill Miller?
No. What?
His wife wants him to get one of those new beds.
One of those big beds? Oh my gosh. What's he gonna do?
I really don't know. Ben Miller's son just quit his job as a box boy at the market.
How?
Said he didn't want to do it anymore. Just took off his apron in the middle of an order. Mrs. Thompson had her groceries spread all over the counter. Took him 4 hours to sort the whole thing out.
Holy cow.
Bob
Now,
takes
George-
a belt of his drink.
George, everyone likes you.
Oh well.
No, they do. And it isn't just because you're a great bowler. They respect you.
Thank you very much.
And it's important for them to see someone they respect stand up for what's right. If you love a place, you can't sit around and watch this kind of thing happen to it.
No, of course not.
And that's why I want you to be on the Pleasantville Chamber of Commerce.
Oh my gosh. I hardly know what to say.
Well, why don't you start by saying yes, and then getting me one of those swell pineapple kebabs.
Oh, sure. You bet. Betty!
There's no answer.
Betty!
Still no answer.
Betty! Bob wants to try one of your great hors d'oeuvres.
George turns around to see David, standing on the landing, listening to the entire conversation. Their eyes lock for a moment.
I'll get her.
He moves quickly to the kitchen, shutting the door behind him. In the kitchen, David gets a couple of steps in and stops. He looks across the room to see Betty standing at the kitchen sink, just staring out the window. Her back is to him, and she grips the Formica kitchen counter.
Are you okay?
She doesn't answer. David moves up to her and rests a hand on her shoulder.
Are you all right?
Betty turns around to face him. Her face has turned completely to color. The eyes are green, the lips are red. She has a natural blush in her cheeks. In fact, the whole thing looks like a beautiful color portrait, except for the tear stains on either side of her face.
What am I gonna do?
David moves closer and looks at her. Her lip is quivering.
It's okay. It's all right.
I can't go out there. How can I go up?
She looks right up at David. Different angle. He stares at her for a second, big green eyes full of fear and confusion. David pushes a reassuring smile.
Got any makeup?
In my handbag.
He crosses to the counter and grabs her purse. David sits Betty on the kitchen chair and fishes inside the handbag for a compact. He finds it along with the wadded up Kleenex.
Okay. First, we'll dry you out a little.
He dabs at the tears while she smiles at him in gratitude. Then David opens the compact and takes out a large gray powder puff. Closer. It's a truly amazing sight. As David smears the makeup, she returns gradually to black and white. The skin tones disappear, the flush of her cheek goes. David takes out a dark gray lipstick, obliterating the bright red of her lips. Reverse angle over Betty's shoulder. He works on her face for a second or two and then takes a step back. All at once, David seems to wince. His point of view, Betty's face. The life is gone from her face. In an instant, she's gone from 3 dimensions to 2. She stands in front of him, the fictional version of herself, all over again.
What?
David shakes his head and forces a smile. He hands her the compact so she can examine herself. She holds it up to her face, turning her head first right, then left.
Does it look okay?
It looks just like it did.
They won't be able to tell.
No, they won't be able to tell.
Betty takes a deep breath and fluffs her hair. She grabs the plate of pineapple kebabs and heads for the door. Just before she goes in, she pauses, then plasters on a big, wide stewardess smile.
Wait.
What?
He wants to say something, but doesn't. He just shakes his head.
It's fine.
She smiles again and balances the tray in front of her.
Thank you.
Sure.
He watches as she opens the door and marches in the room, extending the little tray of hors d'oeuvres in front of her. Cut to interior soda shop day. Mr. Johnson is all alone in the shop, setting up the napkin dispensers. He whistles take 5, then the screen door slams behind him. Mr. Johnson looks up with a start.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
You a little early?
I brought you something from the library.
Following David, he has a large book tucked under his arm that's easily 3 feet long. Mr. Johnson looks at him a little intrigued as David crosses the counter.
It's an art book.
Oh my gosh, Bud.
Open it.
Mr. Johnson reaches out and opens the cover. After a beat, his eyes widen.
I just thought since you liked painting, it might help to.
Mr. Johnson gasps. It's quiet and subtle, but it's still a gasp. David looks over at him, but he's lost in the pages. His point of view, insert art book. Expulsion of Adam and Eve leaps off the page in a vibrant, tortured color. The beauty of the garden is offset by their agony and their shame. He turns the page. Venus to Utano, soft, fleshy, in a rich golden light, she is utterly real and entirely nude. The folds of her flesh almost seem to glow. Rembrandt's self-portrait, dark reds, umbers, blacks, browns. He looks back at Mr. Johnson with pain and wisdom. There's a brilliant light on his hair. Faintly, almost imperceptibly, the sound of a rich aria begins to underscore the images. It's so faint you can't be sure you even hear it at all, like you're hearing it with your eyes. He turns the page faster. Harvesters, steam train, cathedralo, oranges. Mr. Johnson shuts the book. They sit like that for a beat.
Beautiful, Bud.
He looks up at David, troubled.
What's wrong?
I'll never be able to do that.
Oh, well, you're just starting out. I mean, we can't do it.
It's not it.
Mr. Johnson shuts the book gently.
Where am I gonna see colors like that?
Angle on David. What can he say? David looks over at Mr. Johnson, who just smiles and shrugs.
Must be awfully lucky to see colors like that. I don't even know how lucky they are.
Close up on David. He just stares for a second. Exterior Main Street, long shot. Margaret walks up the center of Main Street towards the camera with her books pressed against her chest. She passes the drugstore, then the hardware store. Far off in the distance, a young man comes racing out of the soda shop, pulling off his little paper hat as he goes. He comes running up behind her as fast as he can. He takes a deep breath and tries to quiet the panting.
Hi.
Hi.
Look, I probably shouldn't be asking you this, not knowing you that well and all.
Margaret stops in the street and turns to him.
It's just that my folks are going to stay home and they said I could use their car. Do you want to go out with me tonight?
He wants to turn away, but doesn't. David forces himself to stare at her, and all of a sudden she beams. It's the whitest, pearliest smile in the world. Sure. Where would we go?
A Lover's Lane?
Cut to exterior Elm Street. David comes flying around the corner in complete jubilation. He vaults over the parking meter, swings around the lamppost, and leaps off the bumper of a parked car. David high-fives into the air, no one in particular, and sails over Mr. Simpson's hedge, almost decking him in the process.
Sorry.
Following David, he races across the street, bobbing and weaving like an all-American fullback. David bounds up the front steps 2 at a time, flinging open the door. Inside the Parker House foyer,
Go marching in.
he lets the door slam behind him as he takes off the apron and tosses it on the coat rack. David starts up the stairs when he hears a man's voice coming from the living room.
Bud.
He pauses a second and glances back.
David.
He peers into the living room. David goes a little grayer. His point of view of the television. Dick Van Dyke is looking back at him from the middle of the TV screen. He seems to have a bit of stubble.
Hello there.
Hi.
Oh, come here, you fella.
David crosses slowly over to the TV set.
I've been thinking I might have been a little hasty the other day when you asked to come home. Just took me by such surprise,
He gives a goony laugh, and David just looks at him.
So even though I can't make any promises, I figure if you just ask me real nice, I might just be willing to talk about it again.
I can't
What?
talk about it right now. I mean, I got to him.
The look turns suddenly dark and ominous.
Bud, I thought you wanted to come home.
Oh, I do. Yeah, it's just that I told my dad I'd clean out the rain gutters, and Mr. Johnson wanted me to change the tape in the register.
I'll be honest with you, Bud. I'm getting sort of concerned about what I'm seeing in some of these reruns.
Reruns?
Like when Margaret Henderson makes her cookies for Whitey. Those aren't your cookies, Bud!
I know they're not, but I mean, they're just cookies after all.
Excuse me?
Well, they're not just cookies. I mean, they're great cookies. Look, I'd love to get into this whole thing, but I'm really running late. Why don't we hook up tomorrow?
Bud!
Terrific. I'll talk to you then.
He switches off the TV, sending Dick Van Dyke into an electronic limbo. David stands in the middle of the living room, breathing hard. Interior Jennifer's, Mary Sue's room. She sits on the bed, staring down at the front cover of the book. It's an alien experience. Jennifer is just about to open it when she senses something and glances towards the door. Reverse angle. Bud is standing in the doorway, just staring at her. He seems to be out of breath.
What's wrong?
Nothing.
Nothing?
He keeps breathing hard in the doorway, and he holds the remote in his hands.
Listen,
He takes a couple of steps into the room and suddenly stops.
you're reading?
Yeah. Can't believe you started such a dorky fad.
She holds up the cover.
D.H. Lawrence. You ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Yeah, seemed kind of sexy. Look, I mean, I read 35 pages.
That's great.
He just stares at her for a second as his mind seems to drift.
So what is it?
Well, I just, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Remember when you told me that Lisa Rosenberg liked me?
Yeah.
Well, did she really like me, or were you just making that up?
No. She really liked you.
You weren't playing a joke? She would have gone out with me?
Gone out with you. She would have rearranged your tonsils.
Wow.
He looks at her amazed, reliving the missed opportunity.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How come I'm still in black and white?
What?
Well, I've had like 10 times as much sex as these girls, and I'm still like this. They've had 1 hour of back in the car, and suddenly they're in Technicolor.
I don't know. Maybe it's not just the sex.
What?
She stares at him wide-eyed, like someone who's just heard their name called. Jennifer's eyes dart around like she's calculating a math problem. After a moment or two, her expression changes, a vague look of recognition.
No. It's not just the sex, is it?
She glances down at her book. It's a big book. Jennifer takes a deep breath and stares at the gray scan of her hand. After a second or two, she looks back. David looks at her for a beat. Cut to exterior Margaret's house, Maple Street, day. David gets out of his dad's convertible, carrying a dozen gray roses. He takes a deep breath and heads up to her front walk. Interior car, night, later. David sits behind the wheel of the borrowed car with Margaret by his side. He concentrates hard on the road, holding the wheel at 10 and 2, as he steals a glance to his right. His point of view, Margaret. It's not quite evening yet, and late afternoon light makes her glow. Margaret smiles as she turns her face to the warm wind that swirls inside the convertible. Shot of David. He studies her for a moment or two and suddenly swerves to avoid a parked car on his right. They pass a sign with a happy family on it that reads, "Now leaving Pleasantville." Main Street turns into a winding country road as they leave the town behind and head off into the woods. They wind through the dense woodland for a moment or two before a second sign appears, much like the first. Now entering Pleasantville. Different angle through the windshield. Sure enough, the town emerges in front of them again, completing the four-dimensional circle. David looks confused. You gotta turn off Main Street.
Oh, right.
He looks over at her and smiles. Margaret turns on the radio. Sam Cooke sings for them as David turns from Main Street onto a smaller, unmarked lane. The car starts to rise up a small hill, with dogwood trees blooming on either side of the road. It continues to climb up the narrow gravel lane towards the crest in the hill. David looks over at Margaret, who takes a deep breath, shutting her eyes. He glances down at the seat between them. His point of view, the car seat. The roses that were gray have suddenly turned to color. They sit next to him on the seat, a deep, rich red. David looks up and out the windshield. The same thing seems to be happening around him. Many of the dogwoods have started to turn pink. Not all of them, but at least 50% of the petals have bloomed in some weird false spring. The road twists and turns on its way to the top as they finally reach a crest in the hill.
Wow.
Their point of view, Lover's Lane. There, sitting in front of them, is a whole world gone technicolor. The lake is bluer than blue. The weeping willow is greener than green. The dogwood petals, all turned now, swirl in the wind like some strange pink snowstorm. A long line of pastel cars stretches out along the shore.
Cupid, draw back your bow.
Slowly, David rolls the convertible forward. Many of the kids have left their cars and sit down along the grassy bank by the edge of the water. A few of them have books open. It almost looks Athenian. David looks at the whole scene for a moment and suddenly cocks his head to the side.
What's that smell?
Margaret looks at him and smiles. She leans well out of the convertible and plucks a gardenia from a bush that's blooming outside the car. Aren't these great? David takes the flower and puts it in his nose. He takes a long, deep breath. Then all at once, his posture seems to relax. As the fragrance enters his body, his eyes drift like some strange narcotic is washing over him. David lowers the flower. Exterior Main Street, dusk. Betty is walking down Main Street with a shopping bag on either hand. From a block away, she looks like any other homemaker in Pleasantville. You don't even notice the gray makeup. Following Betty, she nods to Mrs. Fillmore in the bakery and smiles at Dawn in the post office. Betty is just about to turn on Elm Street when she glances up and suddenly stops. Her point of view across the street. There, in the middle of the block, sits Mr. Johnson's soda shop. The whole scene is still black and white, except for the large cubist painting that fills Mr. Johnson's window. It's rendered in bright pinks, yellows, oranges. Looks like a Braque or a Picasso, except for the unusual subject matter. Upon closer examination, you see that all the spheres and cones add up to an avant-garde snow scene, with a cubist Santa hovering over the rooftops. Shot of Betty as she stares at it, mesmerized for a moment, then starts to wander across the street. It's late afternoon and the business district is empty. She crosses the middle of the block, staring straight ahead. Inside the shop, the door opens and she sticks her head inside. Most of the place is dark, except for one streak of sunlight shining through the window near the back of the store. She glances around and the little bell jingles as she enters.
We're closed right now.
Different angle. He sits in front of the small easel near the back, staring at the board which doubles as a canvas. Mr. Johnson glances over his shoulder and recognizes Betty in the doorway.
Oh, hi.
I'm sorry.
No, come on in.
Reverse angle. He gets up from his stool and crosses towards the door, still holding the palette in his hand. Betty stares at the cubist Christmas in the window.
I just thought it's beautiful.
Thanks.
Their eyes lock for a second, sort of a klutzy silence. Mr. Johnson motions towards his easel.
I was just trying to do one of these still lifes.
He sighs and looks behind him. Next to the easel is a bowl of gray fruit.
Having kind of a tough time.
I think it looks nice.
Well, here's what it's supposed to look like.
He leads her over to the table and points down the art book. It's open to a Cézanne that nearly burns off the page.
Oh my.
They're standing almost on top of each other, gazing down at this book. Neither one of them moves. Betty almost disappears into the pictures drawn by a strange new world.
Here, look at this.
He turns to a Kandinsky, a massive swirl of color. The image is nearly electric.
Where did you get this?
Bud brought it to me.
What?
Here's my favorite.
Insert book. He turns the page near the back to one of Picasso's weeping women. The woman is rendered in pink and red and green. Her head is a large sphere laying peacefully on her shoulder.
What do you think?
She doesn't answer.
Isn't it great how she's resting like that?
She's crying.
Mr. Johnson looks down at the painting.
What?
She's crying.
No, she's not.
Yes, she is.
He looks up at her. A single tear is running down her cheek. She senses it and reaches up to wipe it quickly away, but instead of just wiping the tear, she shakes off a huge swath of gray makeup. A long strip of pink flesh is revealed underneath. Angle on Mr. Johnson as he stares up at her in amazement. She senses something and glances down at her hand. Her fingertips are covered in gray makeup. Betty turns and bolts for the door.
Wait.
I've got to go.
It's all right.
He stops her near the door and she turns her face towards the wall. Mr. Johnson touches her shoulder.
It's all right. Let me see.
No.
He reaches up and gently touches her chin. He moves around to glimpse the other side of her cheek.
It's beautiful.
She freezes like that for a moment, then slowly, haltingly, turns towards him. The color of her real flesh is revealed underneath, and she stands there exposed.
It's beautiful.
She swallows, not sure what to do. Betty glances down.
You shouldn't cover that up.
Mr. Johnson reaches over the little napkin dispenser on the counter and pulls one out. He leans forward and dabs the tears beneath Betty's eyes, then slowly, gently, starts to wipe the makeup off her cheek. Closer still, she recoils a bit, tensing up, then just looks at him. Mr. Johnson is gazing at her true color with wonder and acceptance. She hesitates for an instant and then seems to make a decision. She slowly turns her face to the side, exposing her flesh all the way down to the neck. Mr. Johnson continues to wipe off the makeup in larger and larger strokes as the beautiful pink flesh begins to emerge. Cut to interior Jennifer's, Mary Sue's room. She lies on her bed reading the same book she was browsing earlier. Jennifer seems strangely engrossed as she flips the pages, lying on her stomach, scouring every word. After a moment or two, she gets restless and shifts positions, lifting the book. The cover is plainly visible, Lady Chatterley's Lover. She doesn't have enough light, so Jennifer rises from the bed and crosses to her desk. She sits in the chair and flattens the book in front of her. She's deep in the plot and doesn't even look as she flicks on the desk lamp. She could almost be studying algebra as she sits upright at the little desk. Different angles, she flips the page and peers more intently. Her hair is bothering her, so she pulls it back and knots it in a ponytail. After a little while, her eyes begin to get more tired and she looks up and blinks a couple of times. She notices something across the desk. A pair of Mary Sue's glasses are neatly folded in front of her. Jennifer reaches out, puts them on her head, and glances back down at the print. She can see much clearer now. Jennifer folds her hands in front of her and doesn't even realize that she's mimicked the photograph of Mary Sue that sits beside her in a silver frame. The face is the same, but that's to be expected. So is the ponytail, the glasses, the posture, and the studious look on her face. Jennifer turns the page engrossed in her novel when there's a loud tap on the window. She rises from the desk and pulls back the curtain. She slides open the window. Biff stands on the front lawn, tossing pebbles at the window.
Mary Sue, come on.
What are you doing?
It's 6:30.
So?
We were gonna.
He jiggles
You know.
some more.
Oh. I can't.
Why not?
She glances down at her book.
I'm busy.
With what?
She hesitates for a second, then glances back at the desk. Her own image in the silver frame stares back at her. The hair is pulled back in a ponytail. The glasses sit on the front of her nose.
I'm studying.
She thinks about it for a moment, then suddenly smiles. Biff stands dumbfounded on the sidewalk as Jennifer reaches up and quietly closes the window. Cut to exterior Lover's Lane. David and Margaret sit on the edge of the grass, looking out across the water. Even in the moonlight, the colors are vivid. David still clutches the gardenia in his hand, taking a long hit like an opium addict.
Mm.
Do they have those where you come from?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
You don't know? Margaret laughs like that isn't even possible. She shifts on the grass hiking her skirt up above the knee. It reveals a long tan leg beneath it. David watches as she kicks off her shoes, rubbing her feet through the long, cool grass. So what's it like?
What?
Out there. She clings to the words like they could transport her by themselves, and David thinks for a moment.
Oh, I don't know. It's different.
She leans forward. How?
Well, it's louder and scarier, I guess, and a lot more dangerous.
Sounds fantastic. You know, some kids come up here the other night to go swimming, took off all their clothes. She giggles. David looks at her in amazement. Do they have an ocean? I've heard about the ocean.
Yeah.
What's it like?
Well, it's big and it's blue. It's really, really blue.
Boy, it's hot up here. Suddenly, and without warning, Margaret unbuttons her cardigan sweater. She slips it off, arching her back like the figurehead of a ship, and David just stares at her breasts. She wears a light cotton blouse, and even in the moonlight, it forms a translucent silhouette. She lays the sweater across the grass and leans back on it. You want some berries?
Huh?
She unfolds a handkerchief, revealing a handful of berries in reds and blues and purples. I picked them myself. They grow wild up here. So sweet.
They just grow like that?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Currants and strawberries. Here, I'll show you. She hops up and scampers across the grassy bank, kicking her heels behind her. She reaches in a tree in the distance and reaches toward an upper limb. Stretching out her body like a piece of statuary, she picks a piece of fruit and scampers back towards him, hiking her skirt up as she goes. Here! She sticks out her hand, offering him a bright red apple. It's brilliant and shiny and glistens in the moonlight. Angle on David, he hesitates, just looking at it. She speaks in a whisper. Go on, try it. His point of view. She's lying on her stomach now, and behind the outstretched apple he can see an ample view of her cleavage. Margaret's smiling at him, and the apple shines in the foreground. David reaches out and takes it. For this instant, they seem alone in the garden. He looks down at it, then glances over at Margaret. David hesitates for a split second, then takes a bite of the apple. Cut to exterior Elm Street. George heads home with his briefcase in hand, whistling a happy tune. He smiles at Mr. Simpson and swings the attaché case as he turns and heads up the front walk. Inside, George opens the door and sets the briefcase by the stairs like he always does. He hangs his hat on the hat rack, his coat on the coat rack, and beams as he hollers the nightly greeting.
Honey, I'm home.
There's no response. He looks a little perplexed, but smiles as he calls out again.
Honey, I'm home.
There's more silence. George looks around a little confused, and there's a booming clap of thunder. Cut to interior soda shop. Betty sits in a corner of the shop next to a gray bowl of fruit. She holds her head to the side, sitting gracefully with her chin in the air. Mr. Johnson sits behind his easel, painting her portrait from a few feet away. Betty looks radiant with no trace of the makeup. The warm pink of her flesh tones lit softly by a bare 40-watt bulb. She looks over at Mr. Johnson when they hear the booming clap of thunder. Each of them freezes. There's another, louder boom. Angle on the window. The Cuba snow scene lights up brightly, illuminated by the sudden flash of lightning behind it. Betty leaps up from the chair and crosses the window, looking at it.
What is that?
I don't know.
Betty looks back at Mr. Johnson and suddenly sees the painting. She flinches for a second. Her eyes go wide. Reverse angle, including the painting. It's cubist like the rest of his recent work, but that isn't the shocking part. Even though she sits in front of him fully clothed, Mr. Johnson has painted a beautiful, sensual nude. Betty just stares at the canvas, stunned to see herself revealed like that. The colors are all hot pinks and oranges and yellows, like some Fauves celebration of summertime. There's another even louder peal of thunder. Wider Betty and Mr. Johnson. She looks over and he glances down. After a moment or two, he looks back at her, but she doesn't turn to run. She just stares at him. Then, without even realizing it, moves slightly closer. Cut to Lover's Lane. David and Margaret are locked in a deep, passionate kiss. At first, they don't separate when they hear the booming clap of thunder. It's only when they hear the second one and the rain starts to fall that Margaret pulls back and looks up in the sky. What is that? Angle on David. He's still in amorous daze and doesn't even feel the increasing rain. Starts to pound harder and Margaret looks to him in terror. What's going on?
Rain.
Real rain?
Yeah. You don't have rain either?
She looks at him frightened and David smiles.
Right, of course you don't.
He puts his jacket around her and starts to lead her up the grassy slope. A dozen other couples go scurrying up the bank, looking in terror at the water falling from the sky. What do we do?
We'll just put up the top.
He goes fishing around the boot of the car, looking for the catch to release it. David leans to the back seat, fishing around as the rain starts to pound harder. What top? He looks back at her. No top either. David smiles, drenched in the rain, and puts his arm around her, starting to shiver.
It's fine. Come on.
He leads her back to the thicket of bushes with several of the kids are clustered together. They look at one another terrified as they huddle for shelter beneath the ledge of an overhanging rock.
That's all right. There's nothing to be afraid of.
They look a little reassured and Margaret looks up at him positively adoringly. She clings to his shoulder as the storm howls a few feet away. Cut to Jennifer's room. She stands in the window looking out at the driving rain. She still holds the D.H. Lawrence book in her hand. There's a huge flash of lightning and another clap of thunder.
Cool.
She flops back down on the bed and continues to read. In the living room, George wanders through the empty, darkened house, completely perplexed and utterly disoriented. He looks around for his family, but all he can find are darkened rooms and the sound of the driving storm.
Honey? I'm home.
He still can't find her, and he crosses to the dining room. The lights are dark there as well, and he looks around confused.
Where's my dinner?
He sniffs a couple of times, but there's no familiar cooking smells. George flings open the door to the kitchen, but that's empty as well. He crosses into the darkness.
Where's my dinner?
George comes reeling out of the kitchen into the foyer. He slams his shin on the coat rack, but keeps on going.
Where's my dinner?
Outside of the house, it's really blowing now. The rain is coming down in heavy sheets, being swirled and driven by wind. The front door opens and George wanders out on the front porch, still dressed in his shirt sleeves.
Where's my dinner?
Poor George. He stumbles down the front walk, a state of complete confusion. The rain pounds against his body. Within seconds, his shirt is soaked through the skin.
Where's my dinner?
Exterior Elm Street. A tree limb crashes to the ground but keeps stumbling through the torrent. George reels down the Elm Street, screaming skyward in the distance.
Where's my dinner? Where's my dinner?
Series of shots following George. He turns on Main Street, goes reeling past the insurance agency where he works. George howls into the wind as he passes the hardware store, the gas station, the bakery. Finally, he pauses outside the barber shop. It's empty as well, with the spinning barber pole being buffeted around by the rain. George lowers his arms, just stares into the darkened shop. His voice grows quieter, bewildered and shivering.
Where's my dinner?
He wraps his arms around himself and shivers on the sidewalk. In the bowling alley, the regular occupants of the barber shop spread out across 3 lanes. Each wears a Pleasantville bowling shirt sponsored by one of Big Bob's businesses. The noise from the crashing pins is deafening, and there aren't any windows, and the storm has gone unnoticed. Angle on Big Bob. He picks up the 7-10 split and claps his hands in delight. He starts to cross back to the scorer's table when he looks out and suddenly stops. Reverse angle. George is standing in the doorway to the bowling alley, cold and shivering. His shirt is soaked through to the skin. His hair is drenched and dripping.
What happened?
He doesn't answer. George clutches his body and keeps shivering. The men stop bowling and rush to George's side. He blinks a couple of times, still soaked to the bone.
Are you all right? What is it?
Rain.
Real rain?
George nods. Bob rushes to the glass door of the bowling alley and sees the driving storm. A huge fork of lightning lights up the sky.
Oh my God.
He turns back to George.
We had no idea Bert was rolling a 250 and are you all right?
George shivers and Bob leads him over to one of the benches and guides him into the seat.
What happened?
Well, I came home like I always do, and I came in the front door, and I took off my coat, and I put down my briefcase, and I said, "Honey, I'm home."
Angle on the men. They all nod in recognition. Angle on George.
Only no one was there.
A murmur goes through the men.
So I went into the kitchen and I yelled it again. "Honey, I'm home." But there was no one there. No wife, no lights, no dinner.
They all gasp.
So I went to the oven, because I thought maybe she had made me one of those TV dinners.
The men nod and lean forward. He shakes his head.
But she hadn't. She was gone.
A louder murmur moves through the crowd. George lowers his head and just shakes it from side to side. Big Bob moves in and puts a hand on his shoulder.
It's gonna be fine, George.
George looks up at him helplessly. Bob pats him reassuringly on the back.
What do we do, Bob?
Well, we'll be safe for now. Thank goodness we're in a bowling alley. But if George here doesn't get his dinner, any one of us could be next. It could be you, Gus, or you, Bert, or even you, Phil.
They murmur again as Bob gathers a little steam.
That's real rain out there, gentlemen. This isn't some little virus that's going to clear up on its own. There's something happening to our town, and I think we can all see where it comes from.
They nod in agreement.
We're going to need a town meeting. Phil, how fast can you turn around a leaflet in your print shop?
A couple of hours?
Gus, why don't you get a bunch of kids from the basketball team to help you put them up on lampposts and tree trunks?
Gus nods. Big Bob turns to George and smiles. It's a warm, patriarchal smile. He claps a hand on George's shoulder.
And the first thing you're going to do is get a cup of hot cocoa and a nice dry bowling shirt.
In the soda shop, the rain still pounds out the window. Betty and Mr. Johnson are huddled in one of the booths watching the deluge through Mr. Johnson's snow scene in the window. Betty is in soft, radiant color now. Almost the whole frame seems to glow pink.
You can't go out there.
But I really should get home.
But you can't go out there.
There's another fork of lightning and the booming peal of thunder. Betty sighs. She's past struggling. Betty shuts her eyes for a moment and listens to the rain pounding on the roof.
Sounds nice. Once you get used to it.
Yeah, it does.
There's another flash and a loud boom. Betty smiles this time.
Like a drum.
Yeah. Or like sprinklers in the summer.
Betty smiles. They both listen for a moment, and the fear seems to fade a little. The rain pounds harder on the roof as Betty nestles down in the booth, a little closer to Mr. Johnson. They just sit there, listening for a moment or two, and Betty starts to smile. At Lover's Lane, David huddles with Margaret under the rocky ledge as she nestles against him with her head on his shoulder. In Jennifer's room, she lies on her bed, still reading the book. The splitting image of Mary Sue. Her hair is up in a bun now. The glasses have slipped down her nose. There's another fork of lightning and the loudest thunderclap of all. Jennifer smiles slightly and pulls Mary Sue's afghan over her shoulders as she fluffs the pillow and turns the page. Cut to close-up, a bright red rose. Drops of moisture cling to the petals as it gleams brilliant red in the morning sun. Aerial shot, Pleasantville. The rain is gone now. The town glistens in the sunlight, complete with a huge rainbow arching across the sky. Literally all the colors in the rainbow shine against the black and white of the town. It looks like a greeting card. In the soda shop, Betty and Mr. Johnson are asleep in the booth, lying in each other's arms. Sunlight streams in through the window, warming Mr. Johnson's face, which is now turned to color. He opens his eyes and looks outside.
Oh my gosh.
At Lover's Lane, birds are chirping. David and Margaret also lie asleep in each other's arms. Beneath the shelter of the rocky overhang, Margaret lifts up and sees the rainbow. She's turned to color as well. Oh my God! In Jennifer's room, she's passed out on her bed with her book on her chest. Her hair is still tied in a bun and she still wears Mary Sue's glasses, but her face has returned to its rosy pink hue. She blinks open her eyes, feeling the sunlight, and looks out the window.
Oh my God.
The bowling alley, the men are all passed out, across the various lanes and scoring tables. It looks like a YMCA shelter. After a moment or two, Big Bob yawns and stretches and glances out the glass doorway. He sees the rainbow and freezes in shock.
Oh my God.
Cut to exterior Elm Street. David comes gliding up Maple Street in the sunshine with a huge smile on his face. He has that special grin and faraway look that a boy only knows once in his life. Perplexingly, he is still in black and white, but turns on Elm Street and starts heading for his house when he glances up and suddenly freezes. His point of view, tree trunk. There, tacked to the bark, is a hastily scrawled public notice. Town meeting tonight, all true citizens of Pleasantville. Angle on David as he looks up for a moment. Interior Parker kitchen, dusk. George and Betty stand face to face in their suburban kitchen. He is black and white. She is in full color.
I told you where I was.
All night?
I got caught in the storm. You were gone all night too.
I was in a bowling alley.
Betty turns and glances out the window.
Look, let's just forget about it. Let's just go to the meeting and...
I told you, George. I'm not going.
Sure you are.
No, I'm not.
She turns to face him and George flinches slightly.
Look at me, George. That meeting's not for me. Look at my face.
It's fine. You'll put on some makeup and...
I don't want to put on some makeup.
George's eyes widen. It's a watershed moment.
It goes away. It'll go away.
I want it to go away.
He suddenly squares back his shoulders and puffs out his chest.
Okay, now you listen to me. You're gonna come to this meeting and you're gonna put on this makeup and you're gonna come home at 6 o'clock every night and have dinner ready on this table.
No, I'm not, sweetie.
His expression leaves as quickly as it came, and Betty moves closer to him.
There's a loaf in the fridge. You just put it in the oven and turn the knob up to 350. If you put the pie in 40 minutes later, it will be hot in time for dessert.
George's eyes widen.
Made a couple of lunches for you in brown paper bags. I'm gonna go now.
Where are you gonna go?
I'm gonna go now.
She turns and starts out the kitchen door when George calls after her.
Betty, don't go out there like that. They'll see you. They'll see you.
And she closes the door behind her.
Betty, come back here.
Exterior town hall. Dozens of black and white citizens stream through the front door. Shot opposite side of the street. Several transformed teenagers stare at the spectacle with their flesh-colored skin and bright blue eyes. They seem to hang back in the shadows. In the town hall, Big Bob stands at the podium beneath the permanent banner that reads Pleasantville Chamber of Commerce. As the only legally constituted body in Pleasantville, it is a natural place for a town meeting. There's nothing bright and cheery, however. The floor lamps in each corner cast huge looming shadows up the walls. The light at the podium bathes in Big Bob's face in a blinding splash of light. The whole thing evokes some weird, twisted image from German Expressionism, like they're about to go look for Frankenstein. It's grayer than gray. Big Bob stands at the lectern with a rotary insignia on the front. He speaks calmly but compellingly to 100 men and women who hang on his every word. Bob holds the bright yellow grapefruit.
This was found over in Dave Murphy's trash can. There were 4 of them like this.
There's a murmur from the crowd. Close up on George. He sits up on the stage in an honored position right behind Bob. George wears the shiny new rotary pin on his lapel as his full-fledged member of the Chamber of Commerce. He sits stoic and upright with the sense of safety and reassurance that a shiny new pin can give you. Shot of Bob as he holds up a pair of bright red boxer shorts.
Jane Davidson found these in her son's laundry basket.
There's a louder murmur. The crowd shifts in their seats. Bob points behind him in a bright green lawn chair.
This is from Mary Peterson's front porch. She found one last week. There were 2 more this morning.
The murmur starts to grow. Cut to exterior Elm Street. David and Margaret stand beneath the big elm outside of Margaret's house, a statue of 2 young lovers. They wrap their arms around each other in classic silhouette. The meeting across town seems a million miles away. After a moment or two, David reaches behind the tree and pulls out a beautifully wrapped gift. It's 3 feet long with a bright red bow.
I got something for you.
Margaret's eyes widen. She beams at him, then tears off the wrapping paper, revealing a great big umbrella, a real umbrella. She looks at him thrilled. It's beautiful. Where'd you get it?
It was a prop from the school play.
She looks down and giggles. Can I open it?
Sure.
Margaret gives him a quick kiss, then opens the umbrella. She puts it back on her shoulder and turns a series of pirouettes, like her own kind of rain dance. Margaret points her face up to the sky as if she's being showered by a summer storm. All at once, a pair of headlights round the corner. David grabs the umbrella and closes it quickly. She looks to the street as the convertible slows to a crawl and 2 teenage boys pull up beside them. They're clean cut with black and white faces.
Hello, bud.
Hello, Whitey.
They smile at each other for no good reason. It's scary and arrogant. Travis.
Hello, Margaret.
Hello, Whitey.
Hey, bud. How come you're not at the town meeting right now?
No reason. How come you're not?
Oh, we're supposed to go out and let everybody know about it. See.
He points to an armband that has some sort of Chamber of Commerce seal on it. Nazi. Whitey leans out of the car and leers.
No reason, huh? See, I thought maybe it was because you were too busy entertaining your girlfriend.
Margaret literally flinches.
Colored girlfriend.
Damn it, Travis. Margaret literally flinches. The boys share a peal of laughter and snort at each other. David puts an arm around her and pulls her close.
Why don't you guys just get the hell out of here?
Okay, bud. We'll do that.
He guns the engine as if to leave, then pauses and turns towards Margaret.
You know, Margaret, you can come over and bake those oatmeal cookies for me anytime you want.
They share another chortle as Whitey guns the car and peels out with a screech. We're all laughing at you, Whitey. Margaret's lip starts to quiver and David holds her tighter.
It's fine. It doesn't mean anything.
She nods, groping for reassurance. Cut to the town hall. Chamber of Commerce meeting is still in full swing. Various citizens are now on their feet, screaming from the audience.
Ed McFadden's got a blue front door.
It's always been blue. Not that blue. There's a big tree turning orange in Joe Baker's front yard.
Shot of George. He still sits behind Bob with the same stoic expression on his face. George fingers the little pin on his lapel.
People, I think we all know what's going on here.
Bob lifts his hands in the air and the crowd quiets down a bit.
Now, obviously, certain changes have been happening. Up until now, things in Pleasantville have always been, well, pleasant. And recently, certain things have become unpleasant. Now, it seems to me the first thing we have to do is to separate out the things that are pleasant from the things that are unpleasant.
There's a loud murmur and a nod of agreement.
George, why don't you and Bert take the lead on this? Why don't you put together kind of an unpleasant activities committee?
Cut to soda shop. Mr. Johnson has scrubbed the snow scene from the window and stares with his palette in a blank pane of glass. There's a knock at the door. Mr. Johnson puts down the paints and crosses to open it. Betty's standing in the doorway, clutching her purse and a Lady Samsonite weekender bag. She stares up into his eyes. Dissolve to, full shot, shop window, morning. Bert Campbell opens the hardware store like he does every morning, only today there's a slight difference. He swings open the door, puts the rakes and shovels, then sets a newly handwritten sign clearly in the front window. No coloreds. Series of shots, shop windows. As the businesses opened on Main Street, more and more no coloreds signs appear in the windows. Next to the donuts, by fishing poles, beside the stationery supplies, everything else looks frighteningly the same. Cut to Main Street. Joey Anderson, the local paperboy, is finishing his morning rounds. He reaches in his bag and tosses left towards the bakery. Then he throws right towards the post office. Then he turns left towards the soda shop, does a double take, and slams into a trash can. Soda shop. Where Mr. Johnson had once painted his Cubist snow scene, there is a brand new painting that isn't Cubist at all. It's a nude version of Betty, who graces the shop window. Painted a curving sensual brushstrokes. Joey stops his bike and just stares in amazement. He gets up and rides away as fast as he possibly can. Cut to Main Street later. David is in a happy daze, wandering up Main Street and doesn't even notice the crowd gathered outside Mr. Johnson's soda shop. After a moment or two, he glances up and sees the window. His eyes go wide. The murmur of the crowd goes louder as stray, derisive comments rise above the noise. David glances from the nude in the window, to the growing angry mob. Main Street. David goes tearing through the business district looking for any signs of his mother. He glances in the flower shop towards the green grocer. David's just about to turn to Elm Street when a booming voice seems to come from the sky.
Bud.
David stops and looks to his right. There, in the window of a TV store, are 20 screens of a various size displaying the image of Dick Van Dyke.
I want a word with you.
Oh, well.
Now!
The sound reverberates like God himself. David ducks inside the store, slamming the door behind him. In the store, 50 Dick Van Dyke stare at him from every TV in the store, and the effect is smothering.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
David glances around, not sure where to look.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? You think this is a toy? You think this is your own goddamn coloring book?
Look, it just sort of happened.
A deluge doesn't just happen. Bolts of lightning don't just happen. You burned down an elm tree, for Christ's sake!
I had nothing to do with that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Refresh my memory. What episode does the orgy happen in again?
Look.
It was a gift, Bud. It was so special. You did these things. You liked these things as much as I did, remember? Warm smells in the family kitchen. A smile from a stranger. You know how rare that is?
Only if they mean it.
Dick Van Dyke looks at him for a beat, then goes red in the face.
Okay, now you're really starting to piss me off.
I didn't do anything wrong.
Oh no? Oh no? Let me show you something.
TV screen. All at once, a box appears in the upper right-hand corner of the screen containing the image of David and Margaret at Lover's Lane. The videotape rolls forward as she extends the bright red apple. David hesitates, then takes it, then puts it to his mouth and takes a bite.
You don't deserve this place.
The image of David biting the apple plays backwards and forwards like some football instant replay.
You don't deserve to live in this paradise.
David just stares at the repeated images of Dick Van Dyke on the TV screens.
Where's the remote control I gave you?
Why?
Because you're coming home. I'm going to put this place back the way it was.
No, you're not.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, I can't let you do that.
Just give me the goddamn remote!
He lunges towards the screen and slams his hands against the barrier.
Ow!
I'm going to leave now.
You're not going anywhere. You're going to get me that remote. You're going to come home and we're going to make everybody happy again.
Dick Van Dyke looks at him stunned as David turns and leaves the shop.
Don't make me get rough with you. I can get really fucking rough.
Elm Street. David sprints down the tree-lined street towards his house. The leaves on some of the trees are starting to turn green, even this far into town. David vaults over to Mr. Simpson's hedge and goes tearing up his front walk. Inside, the door flies open and he rushes in, breathless. David glances around the house to make sure that it's empty. He crosses to the living room. He rushes to the TV and grabs the remote, looks down at it, glances at the television, then bolts for the front door. On Main Street, he moves quickly down the street looking for a place to stash the remote. He pauses in front of the Pleasantville Travel Agency. It has posters in the windows depicting various destinations in and around Pleasantville. The place doesn't see much business. David bends down to stash the remote in the drain pipe near the entrance when he hears voices from up the street. He turns to see a small crowd up near the end of the street. He sticks the remote in the drain pipe and rises to his feet as the voices get louder. Different angle, the crowd is moving towards him. A woman walks in front of a group of young men who circle around her, taunting and harassing her. The woman later David can make out the face. Betty clutches her handbag and her chest while the crowd circles her like a pack of dogs. The rosy hue of her face stands out in stark relief to the black and white faces around her. She holds her head high with dignity and fear, while the ugly epithets overlap on another. Ooh, let's see the rest of you. Let's see what's under that nice blue dress. Bet she's even pinker than the picture. One of the boys yanks at Betty's skirt, and she quickens her pace. Just at that moment, the boy is shoved to the ground. David shields his mother as he shoves one of the boys to the dirt. The kid gets up, but David punches him hard in the side of the jaw, and the rest of them just stare. Violence is as new as anything else, as it seems to freeze the moment. David steps in front of his mother with both fists clenched.
Come on.
He plants his back foot primed for action. The crowd of black and white thugs just stares at it.
Come on.
They look at him warily. The boy reaches up to feel the side of his mouth where the trickle of red blood is running down his chin. He looks at his finger in horror and starts backing away.
Get out of here.
They back away further and David takes a threatening step. The boys turn and run as he turns back to face his mother. Different angle on Betty over David's shoulder. He moves up to her gently.
You all right?
She nods, still clutching her purse to her chest. David reaches out and touches her cheek when suddenly her eyes go wide.
What?
Still over David's shoulder, she reaches into her purse and pulls out her compact. She opens it and holds it up to him, showing him the reflected image of his own face. At last, he has turned to color. Reverse angle on David. He holds the mirror, staring at his own reflection. The courage which transformed him only seems to grow. They look at each other, both in color now, when David puts a gentle arm around her shoulder.
Come on.
He begins to lead her up toward the corner. Cut to, full shot, soda shop window, day. A larger crowd of hooligans is now gathered around the nude painting of Betty in the window. The jeers and catcalls are even louder. The closed sign still hangs in the doorway. After a beat or two, a huge brick shatters the glass. A big cheer goes up from the crowd. Drunk on adrenaline, the fever builds and another brick smashes the window. In an instant, Mr. Johnson's canvas is totally destroyed. The cheering grows louder. Almost by osmosis, the crowd rushes the building together. The door is kicked in and they stream into the place. Soon, all that can be heard is the weird sound of laughter and broken glass. Inside, it's an orgy of destruction. The stools are hurled, tables ripped out, the cash register is turned over. Two boys kick in the front of the jukebox. Exterior Main Street. David and Betty round the corner to find the soda shop being destroyed. They stand on the far side of the intersection watching the carnage as the crowd continues to run amok. After a moment or two, there are some more hoots as Margaret comes running towards them with the front of her blouse ripped open.
Oh my God.
He takes her in his arms as Margaret starts to sob. David strokes her hair.
Are you all right? Are you okay?
She nods, and Margaret catches her breath for a moment or two, then glances down to her side. She's clutching the umbrella in her left hand. The thing has been ripped to shreds. The spines are broken and the fabric is torn. She stares at the thing with a combination of confusion and shame. David goes white with rage and looks towards the mob.
No, let's get out of here.
Cut to exterior country road leading to Lover's Lane. They all ride in George's convertible up the twisting, turning road. It is turned completely pink with dogwood petals. David winds up the trail in the fading light, looking for refuge. He clutches the wheel tight.
We should be okay up here.
Different angle through the windshield. The car twists and turns up the narrow dirt road. After a moment, Lover's Lane reveals itself. It's a lush and green, like before, only this time there is one major difference. A phalanx of black and white thugs have created a roadblock in the foreground. David jams on his brakes when he sees the barrier. It's a weird, incongruous image. The black and white roadblock in front of the vibrant colors of the pond and willow behind, like some perfect dream you can never get to. The thugs have turned their cars sideways and dragged several huge logs across the road. They hold axe handles in their hands.
We better go.
Exterior Main Street. Darkness has fallen and the street lamps have come on. Some debris is scattered around the street and distant sounds of the mob still fill the air. David rolls back into town with the headlights off. Closer, car. Where are they?
I'm not sure.
They head down Main Street and turn a corner on Walnut. All at once, a weird orange light bathes the car. Reverse angle their point of view, a bonfire has been lit in the middle of the street between the library and the barber shop. 20 to 30 people are gathered around, still whooping and hollering as the bright orange flames shoot into the air. David pulls over by the curb and their eyes go wide. From closer up, it becomes clear what they're burning. Huge piles of library books have been dumped into the sidewalk, waiting their turn on a fire. There's a strange celebratory atmosphere as they chuck book after book on the flames, with the glee of a teenager tossing a firecracker. David sees something and bolts from the car.
Oh my God.
Angle on side of the bonfire. Jennifer is locked in some strange wrestling match with Biff. He clutches a book over her head while she tugs at his wrist, trying to stop him from throwing it in the fire.
Don't, just let it go.
It's better, Mary Sue.
I said no. I've read like one book in my whole life, and I'll be damned if I let you throw it into the fire.
Jennifer wrestles with him for a couple of seconds and then suddenly kicks Biff in the groin. You go, girl. He doubles over in agony when Jennifer snatches the book and bolts the other direction. Different angle on the street. She sprints up the street and is just passing the barber shop when a hand reaches out and grabs her. Jennifer starts to scream, but David puts a hand to her mouth.
It's okay. It's me.
Cut to Wide Shop Soda Shop, other side of Main Street. The crowd has moved on and all that is left the dark wreckage of the soda shop. Several stools lie out in the street and shards of brightly painted glass are scattered around the sidewalk. It's eerily quiet. David, Betty, and Margaret sit silently in the car, across the street with the lights off. He unlatches the door handle and gets out slowly. The rest of them follow him to the empty street as they move silently towards the soda shop, like some platoon on patrol. As they get closer, more of the wreckage comes into view. Half a booth, a soda spigot. After a moment or two, Jennifer looks up and gasps. Several teenagers step out of the shadows. They've scraped up faces and ripped clothing, the signs. Most are dazed and all of them are in color. After a second or two, more appear. Mary Jane, Lisa Ann, the boy who was reading Huck Finn. Angle on David. The kids turn to him as if he has some kind of answer. Of course he doesn't. The sounds of the mob still carry through the air from somewhere off in the distance.
Let's go inside.
Inside, the place is just sad. All the remnants of what they had are strewn around the floor. The jukebox is turned over, stools are ripped out of the floor, and Betty looks over at the corner where he painted her. The easel is smashed to bits. Angle on Betty. She brings a knuckle to her lip, and David puts an arm around her, draws her close. After a moment or two, they hear a weird scraping sound.
Hello?
The scraping sound stops. They all look to the open door, and after a second or two, Mr. Johnson appears holding a broom and dustpan.
I just thought I'd try to tidy it up a bit.
Betty runs across and throws her arms around him. The teenagers watch as she holds him tight.
It's okay. Once we sweep it up. It'll be all right again.
Betty stifles a sob as he strokes her hair. No one says anything while they just embrace for a moment. And finally,
Well, he's right. Come on, let's turn these booths back up. Mary Sue, why don't you help me slide this in front of the door? We'll be okay in here.
they respond to the tone of leadership. One by one, the kids start to pitch in, sifting their way through the wreckage. Jennifer and David slide a barricade in front of the door as the kids try to put their shop back together. Cut to Town Hall, Chamber of Commerce meeting. Big Bob stands at the podium addressing a packed house. The atmosphere is odd, somewhere between a bake-off and a lynching. People sit in the aisles and the windowsills. Bob points a finger.
This is not the answer, people.
The crowd quiets a bit and he leans over the lectern.
No matter how upset we may get or how frustrated we may be, we're not going to solve our problems out in the street. It's just the wrong way to do it. We have to have a code of conduct we can all agree to live by.
His tone grows softer, more concerned.
Now, I asked George and Bert here to sketch out some ideas, and I think they've done a terrific job. If we all agree on these, then we can take a vote, and I think we'll start to move in the right direction.
Angle on the crowd, they murmur and nod.
1, all public disruption and acts of vandalism are to cease immediately.
Exterior bonfire. It's still ablaze with books. As Bob continues to read in voiceover, a fire truck comes screeching up to the curb. The same fireman who learned to use the hose before pulls several yards of it from the back of the truck. He can barely contain his excitement as he gets to open the valve, extinguishing the raging bonfire.
2, all citizens of Pleasantville are to treat one another in a courteous and pleasant manner.
Series of shots, lampposts. The code of conduct is nailed to lampposts and tree trunks in rapid succession. It's plastered on walls and in shop windows. In the soda shop, debris is still strewn around the street. A dim light emanates from the shop. It looks like a scene from the French Revolution. 10 to 15 kids huddle behind the barricade while David reads the code of conduct out loud by flashlight.
Courteous and pleasant manner. That doesn't sound too bad.
David just looks at her, then continues.
3, the area commonly known as Lover's Lane, as well as the Pleasantville Public Library, shall be closed until further notice.
This sends a murmur amongst the kids.
4, the only permissible recorded music shall be the following: Pat Boone, Johnny Mathis, Perry Como, Jack Jones, the Marches of Philip Sousa, or the Star Spangled Banner. In no event shall any music be tolerated that is not a temperate or pleasant nature.
Oh my gosh, no.
David holds up his hand.
5, there shall be no public sale of umbrellas or preparation for inclement weather of any kind.
Various glances dart back and forth between them, and David continues.
6, no bed frame or mattress may be sold measuring more than 38 inches wide. 7, the only permissible exterior paint colors shall be black, white, or gray, despite the recent availability of certain alternatives.
David looks over at Mr. Johnson, who just winces slightly. Betty clutches his hand.
8, all elementary and high school curriculum shall teach the non-changist view of history, emphasizing continuity over alteration. Wow.
David lowers the paper. It's silent in the soda shop. Everyone sits motionless for a moment or two, letting the decree sink in. David just stares down at the piece of paper in his hand with a weird kind of sadness. Off in the corner, however, one of the boys has been fiddling with the jukebox and hasn't paid any attention to what was being read. All of a sudden, his voice rings from the corner.
Hey, this thing works.
He hits a button and Buddy Holly's voice fills the soda shop. Rave On blares at almost top volume, recalling a more festive time.
Well, all the things that you say and do make me want to be with you. Ooh, ooh.
Turn that off.
The boy looks back at her.
You're not allowed to do that now.
He flinches and pulls the plug from the wall. The jukebox winds down to a groan as the electricity drains out of it. David looks to the kids and suddenly speaks in a calm, clear tone.
Sure you are.
He walks across the soda shop and plugs it back in. The kids watch spellbound at this personal display of defiance. Buddy Holly's voice fills the soda shop, but it is suddenly different meaning. All the kids listening spellbound as if to an anthem, while the rock and roll lives up to its rebellious reputation.
The little things that you say and do make me want to be with you. Ooh, ooh, rave on. It's a crazy feeling. Rave on. It's got me reeling.
Jennifer looks over at her brother with pride. Betty puts an arm around Mr. Johnson, feeling a little stronger, a little safer. The kids seem to relax a bit, and even if they don't feel totally reassured, at least they don't feel ashamed. 20 colored faces listen as Buddy Holly tells them rave on. David stands beside the jukebox like a captain at the helm of his ship. Exterior street later. He steps out over the debris and looks in both directions. David motions towards the shop, and a moment later, the kids emerge. The disturbance seems to have died down. The street is silent, although strewn with debris. David turns to the kids.
Stick together till you get off Main Street.
They nod and head off down the block. David just watches silently from the wreckage of the soda shop. Dissolved to Town Square. The fire department is cleaning up the charred remains of the bonfire. In the soda shop later, Betty is asleep on one of the booths. Jennifer sleeps beside her on the floor. David and Margaret sleep next to them in another booth, with Margaret curled up against his chest. David opens his eyes. Reverse angle, his point of view. Mr. Johnson is standing in the middle of the shop, staring at the large piece of plywood where his window used to be. He just gazes at the thing as if he could look through it. There's a faraway look in his eye. David rises carefully from the booth without waking Margaret. He crosses over to Mr. Johnson and speaks in a whisper.
It's okay. We'll get you a new one.
I don't know what I'd do if I couldn't paint anymore, bud. I just don't know what I'd do.
Close up on David. He just nods. David glances down at the table next to him, picks up one of the brightly painted shards of glass, and just looks at it. It's orange and pink and yellow. David thinks for a second.
Maybe I have an idea.
Cut to Main Street. Dawn. The same paperboy who rode into the trash can pedals down Main Street, tossing his papers towards the curb. He throws right towards the post office, left towards the hardware store, and right towards the bakery, and finally looks up. This time, the boy slams into a lamppost. He tumbles off his bike and stares straight ahead in disbelief. His point of view, Town Hall. Two men sleep at the base of the wall next to the clutter of paint cans. Above them, however, is painted a vivid, almost utopian mural of the town of Pleasantville in living color. Instead of being drab, the place literally gleams with life. The post office turns out to be a rich red brick. The sky shines in vibrant blue. It's a rendering of what the town could look like. David and Mr. Johnson sleep soundly next to their own signatures. David opens his eyes and sees the paperboy. Angle on the paperboy, he turns around and rides away as fast as he can. Cut to Town Hall later. A huge crowd has gathered. There's a loud buzz in the air. David and Mr. Johnson stand side by side in front of their work like they're presenting and guarding it at the same time. Most of the faces are black and white in the crowd. A few near the back are in color. Big Bob moves through the back of the crowd, hurriedly buttoning his shirt. The buzz grows as the people part as he heads towards the front of the pack. Angle on the front of the crowd. When Bob emerges, Mr. Johnson flinches slightly. David just looks him in the eye and tries to find as much courage as he can. Big Bob looks up at the color rendering of his town with absolute horror. His eyes scan the green trees, the bright yellow gas station, the puffy pink clouds on the horizon.
Did you do this?
Yes, I did.
Bob grabs a copy of the Code of Conduct and waves it at him.
Do you know that it's illegal?
Yes, I do.
Bob looks dumbfounded. He tries to process the whole thing, but just looks more confused. Bob runs his hand through his hair, shaking his head.
Bud, why did you do this?
Because anybody should be able to paint whatever color they want.
Angle on the back of the crowd. Betty stands beside Margaret and Jennifer, watching the spectacle. There's tears in her eyes and a great deal of love. Jennifer smiles with pride at her brother. Shot at Bob.
You're not allowed to do this. I could arrest you for this.
Still doesn't make you right.
There's some clapping from the back of the crowd. Bob's eyes widen. His face goes flushed, a darker gray. A vein bulges in his neck, and he turns to the police chief.
Dan, arrest them.
I don't know how to do that, Bob.
What do you mean?
Well, I never had to do it before, Bob.
You put handcuffs on them and you take them to the police station.
Oh. I guess I could do that then.
Come here, Dan. I'll help you.
David walks towards the police chief and sticks his hands out. A louder murmur moves through the crowd as David actually helps him fasten on the cuffs. Mr. Johnson comes over to join them and a murmur starts to grow. Cut to nighttime. A bright full moon stands out against a jet black sky. Exterior Main Street. A group of colored kids hangs out on the main street near the police station. They gaze off in the distance at the barred window of a jail cell. It's elevated half-story above the street. Everything is black and white except for the warm yellow light that glows through the bars. They know in a glance who's inside. In the jail cell, David sits in his bunk, staring up at the ceiling. The place has never been used, so there's still a plastic wrapping on all the sheets and pillowcases, and he can't help smiling. In a different jail cell, way off down the hall, Mr. Johnson crouches on his bunk, ignoring his food. He clutches a rusty nail and scratches the plaster wall in a true inmate fashion. Reverse angle on the wall. Rather than scratching the days or even the hours, he's carved a huge pastoral landscape into the wall, complete with a lush forest and running brook. He looks at his work and smiles. Shot of the police chief. He approaches David's cell from the other direction and knocks gently on the bars. David turns around.
I thought I heard the.
Yeah, you did, Bob. There's someone to see you, bud.
David sits upright in his bunk, trying to think who could it be. After a moment or two, a strange look of understanding crosses his face. He hears the sound of a key turning in the lock and looks up at the doorway and smiles.
I thought it might be you.
Reverse angle. Dick Van Dyke. He stands in the doorway, still dressed in his TV repairman outfit. For the first time, he is completely in black and white.
Hope you're proud of yourself.
I actually am. Glad to see you finally shown your true colors.
Dick Van Dyke gives a tight smile and shuts the door of the cell behind him.
Okay, let's cut the shit and get right to it. Where's that remote control?
Why?
Because you're coming home.
Why don't you just take me back without it?
Oh, you're a smart little bastard, aren't you? Well, it's kind of like a restricted ticket. You gotta leave the same way you came.
David just looks at him. He smiles confidently and leans back on the bunk.
So I guess as long as I'm here, all sorts of things could happen to this place. We could have pink lawns and blue trees.
Just give me the goddamn remote!
I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Dick Van Dyke takes a deep breath, glances toward the barred window.
I don't know what went wrong. You answered every question. You know every detail. The senior prom, McIntyre's department store. We had all the same warm memories. Sock hops, the church social.
They weren't my memories. I borrowed them. It's no good when you borrow them.
Dick Van Dyke's eyes go wide and he literally starts to tremble.
How long do you think you've been here?
I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks.
Much less than that. Hour and a half.
David looks at him uneasy. Dick Van Dyke flashes a broad, nasty smile.
See, this is really great. The show was on for what? Half an hour a week? So that means for every week that goes by in Pleasantville, only half an hour goes by in the real world.
The smile gets bigger and Dick Van Dyke moves closer to him.
Now, buddy, you're going on trial tomorrow. If they find you guilty, you're going to be stuck here forever. Well, not forever. Let me think. 5-year sentence, carry the 3, comes out to 16 and a half centuries. And that's rounding down.
I'm going on trial tomorrow?
This is TV, pal. They don't fool around.
David is rocked, but tries not to show it.
There's worse places.
Oh, for sure. The first 100 years, then it starts to get a little monotonous. And monotony's the devil. Sleep well.
He taps on the bars for Dan, who opens the lock and lets him out. The door clangs shut as the two of them disappear down the hall. The minute they're gone, the stoicism falls. David looks around his cell, truly afraid. He stares at the tiny cot, the plain light bulb on the ceiling, single pillow with the plastic covering. Forever is starting to look like a long time. David crosses the small window and looks out. His point of view out the window. Across the town square, he can see the side of the town hall, complete with a newly painted mural. The utopian view of Pleasantville is just as he left it, with one notable exception. The edges of the painting are starting to turn black and white. Cut to Town Hall. It's bathed in sunlight. Dozens of people stream through the front door for the first trial in Pleasantville's history. There's a weird carnival atmosphere in the air. Inside, the place has been transformed from the Chamber of Commerce meeting hall to a small town courtroom, complete with pews and ceiling fans. The only carryover from its previous configuration is the huge Chamber of Commerce banner draped across the back wall. Angle on the bench. At the center of the courtroom, where the podium used to be, a large, elevated judge's bench with a rotary insignia on the front. Big Bob sits 6 or 7 feet away from the proceedings, finally living up to his name. The whole thing is a strange combination of Franz Kafka and the inherit of the wind. Big Bob bangs the gavel. The undertone begins to quiet down. All the faces in the pews are black and white. There's a colored section in the back for standing room only. Angle on the juror's box. George is seated in the front row of the jury, despite his relationship to one of the defendants. He is dressed impeccably, with his rotary pin still gleaming on his lapel. After a moment or two, he sneaks a glance towards the back of the room. Angle on Betty. She stands in the back with the rest of the colored faces. She cranes her head to watch the glimpse of David and Mr. Johnson. All at once, a hush goes through the crowd. Angle on the doorway. It swings open. David and Mr. Johnson are led in wearing handcuffs. Dan, the police chief, now bailiff, shows them to a table in the center of the room directly facing Big Bob. There's no lawyer present. There's also no prosecutor. Angle on David as he glances around a little confused. The weird courtroom. Big Bob bangs the gavel.
Bud Parker and William Johnson, you have been charged with desecration of a public building and the intentional use of prohibited paint colors in violation of the Pleasantville Code of Conduct and laws of common decency. Do you admit that on the night of May 1st, you did consciously and willfully apply the following forbidden colors to the Pleasantville Town Hall? Red, pink, vermilion, fuchsia, chartreuse, umber, blue, aqua, oxblood, green, peach, crimson, yellow, olive, and magenta.
Yes, I do. Where's our lawyer?
We prefer to keep these proceedings as pleasant as possible. I don't think a lawyer will be necessary.
There's a murmur and a great deal of nodding amongst the black and white faces. Big Bob smiles to himself, then proceeds.
Do you further admit that this was done surreptitiously and under the cover of darkness?
Well, it was dark out.
Good. Do you further admit that this unnatural depiction occurred in full public view, where it was accessible to and in plain sight of minor children?
It was accessible to everyone.
Very well. Let the record show that the defendants have answered in the affirmative to all the charges.
He looks directly at them for the first time.
Do you have anything to say in your defense?
Shot at the defense table. Mr. Johnson just looks at David, confused and terrified.
Didn't mean to hurt anybody. I just have to paint. I need to.
Gropes for something else to say, but what else is there? David glances over and sees him sit slowly back in his seat. David rises from his chair.
I think I've got something to say.
Very well.
David looks out over the audience. After a moment or two, he looks back at Big Bob.
I think I know why you're doing this. I mean, I understand why you're doing this. I used to feel the same way. I used to want this place to stay just the way it was. I never wanted it to change.
There's a loud murmur and Big Bob bangs the gavel.
But nothing stays the same. You get things and you lose things. And that's the good part and the bad part. But you can't have a good part without a bad part.
He turns and sees his mother in the balcony. They lock eyes for a moment. David smiles slightly but continues.
It's like the basketball team.
The basketball team.
Sure, everybody's upset because they're not winning anymore. But just think how it would feel if all of a sudden they do win.
There's a murmur in the gallery.
Wouldn't it feel better than when they used to win all the time?
There's a louder murmur. Big Bob looks concerned.
See, I know you want it to say pleasant, but there are so many things that are so much better, like silly, or sexy, or dangerous, or wild, or brief. And every one of those things is in you all the time if you just have the guts to look for them. Look at those faces back there. They're no different than you are. They just happen to see something inside themselves that you don't want to.
Okay, that's enough.
I thought I was allowed to defend myself.
You're not allowed to lie.
I'm not lying. Here, I'll show you.
He turns suddenly towards the jury box.
Mr. Simpson. Mr. Simpson.
Yes.
What color is that hedge of yours?
Green.
No, not that hedge. The other one.
The other one?
The one in your mind. The one that you see on a bright, cold morning. The one that you see when you walk in front of your house and you just stand there and stare.
Mr. Simpson suddenly looks far away. He gets kind of a dreamy look in his eyes.
What color is that hedge?
Close up on Mr. Simpson. Suddenly, and before our eyes, Mr. Simpson turns to living color. A huge murmur moves through the courtroom. Big Bob bangs the gavel.
I said that's enough.
No, let him finish.
No,
Go
let
on.
him finish.
Big Bob lifts the gavel and is about to bang it when David suddenly turns towards George.
All right. Dad.
Different angle, there's a louder murmur. Big Bob just looks at him frozen while David confronts his father. George straightens up.
Dad.
Yes, bud.
Don't you miss her?
Close up on George. He looks at him stunned. Big Bob bangs the gavel, but nobody listens. George just stares at him like he got shot.
I mean, of course you do. But it isn't just the cooking or the cleaning that you miss. It's something else, isn't it?
George swallows. The undertone in the room starts to grow as he glances towards the back of the room.
Maybe you can't even describe it. Maybe you only know it when it's gone. Maybe it's like there's a whole piece of you that you're missing too. You might even call it love.
Okay, that's it.
Now, don't you think she looks just as pretty in color? Don't you think she looks just as pretty as she did the day you met her?
Slowly, almost imperceptibly, George nods. A single tear rolls down his cheek as it traces the side of his face and leaves a long trail of color behind it.
Don't you wish you could tell her that?
He nods again and it all comes out. Betty smiles at him through her tears, and even Mr. Johnson smiles as well.
You're out of order.
Why am I out of order?
Because I will not allow you to turn this courtroom into a circus.
Well, I don't think it's a circus, and I don't think they do either.
David motions behind him to the black and white section. There are now 10 to 15 colored faces.
This behavior will stop at once.
But see, that's just the point. It can't stop at once because it's in you, and you can't stop something that's in you.
It's not in me.
Oh, sure it is.
No, it isn't.
He crosses the bench, looking right up at Big Bob, and leans over the bench to get right up in his face.
What do you want to do to me right now?
Big Bob starts to tremble. He shakes with rage as David moves closer.
Come on. Everyone's turning colors. Kids are making out in the street. No one's getting their dinner. Hell, you can't even have a flood. You could have a flood any minute. Pretty soon, you could have the women going off to work while the men stayed home and cooked.
That's not going to happen.
But it could happen.
No, it couldn't.
Big Bob looks at David and starts to tremble. It starts around the base of his neck, spreads quickly up the rest of his head. After a moment or two, Big Bob has gone completely red in the face. A gasp goes through the courtroom. David looks at him and just smiles. The crowd reaction turns almost to a roar as Big Bob turns and catches his reflection in the window. Close up on Big Bob, he sees the ruddy image staring back at him, then looks at his hands. They've gone completely red as well. Big Bob freezes for an instant, then bolts from the bench in panic and flees the room, fleeing open the doors to the courtroom. Angle on the doorway as Big Bob flees. He reveals an amazing sight. The town square glistens in living color. The huge lawn is rich, deep green. The sky is a dense, opaque blue. Dozens of spectators bolt from their seats and rush to the doorway as the crowd moves outside. Exterior Pleasantville in full color. All the birds are really chirping. Red brick, yellow cars, green hats. The barber pole in front of Gus's has finally turned to red, white, and blue. He can't help but smile. David walks out into the sunlight and stares in wonder at his creation. The whole town is washed in joy. Margaret comes up and throws her arms around him. They meet in a rich, passionate kiss, in direct defiance of the code of conduct. Several people around them actually clap, like spectators at a wedding. Jennifer moves up next to them and looks at her brother making out.
Ugh. I am like gonna hurl.
David turns and looks at her, but both of them laugh. David throws his arms around his sister, and more people stream out of the courtroom into the sunlight. Dissolve to exterior Main Street. David and Jennifer stand together on the edge of town. She clutches the valise in her hand and he holds the remote control.
Are you sure?
Told you. I'm like positive.
This thing works. We could go home right now.
I'm not ready yet. I gotta do this for a little while.
They stand on the edge of town, which finally has an edge. A larger sign says Springfield 12 miles, and for the first time, the end of Main Street is no longer the beginning. Jennifer is dressed in Mary Sue's clothes with a little bit of style thrown in. Rich fields of wheat spread out in the distance.
Besides, you think there's like a chance I'm gonna get into college back there?
Honestly, no.
They both smile.
You got the admissions letter,
Right here.
and you're sure about this.
I've done the slutty thing, David. It's really kind of old.
David nods.
I'll come back and check on you in a month.
Jennifer nods and gives him a hug. She holds on tight for a couple of seconds.
You're like the coolest brother in the world.
David smiles. Never been called cool before. They suddenly hear the sound of a motor and look to their left. A huge Greyhound bus lumbers up the highway, pulling to a halt at the sign. The doors open, beckoning her in. Jennifer smiles at her brother and turns towards the door. Exterior Margaret's house. She clutches her umbrella at her side. David holds a bag of oatmeal cookies. Each one clings on the other's clothing. Their faces are inches apart. You're gonna forget about me.
No, I won't. I swear.
Margaret nods. She looks at him for a moment, then wraps her arms around his neck. They meet in a long, rich, wet, soft kiss. The umbrella falls to the ground. I like calling you David.
I like it too.
Interior Parker living room. David stands in front of the television with Mr. Johnson at his side. He holds the remote control in his hand. Mr. Johnson seems pretty amazed at the whole idea.
How do you know it won't go back to the way it was?
You're gonna keep painting, aren't you?
Mr. Johnson nods.
Well,
He nods again and thinks about it. They smile at each other one last time.
Oh, I've got something for you.
He pulls out a folded piece of paper. Mr. Johnson extends it to David, who unfolds it and instantly smiles. Insert paper. It's a small painted replica of their mural in the same vibrant colors. Everything is scaled perfectly, exactly like the one on the wall. Shot of David.
it's beautiful.
Just a little, you know.
David looks up at him and smiles. All at once, he glances towards the door. Betty's standing there holding a brown paper bag, a sweater's draped over her arm.
I made you these for the trip. The marshmallow and rice squares.
Thanks. I thought you weren't gonna.
Say goodbye.
She looks up at David and their eyes lock. Betty hands him the bag.
And there's a meatloaf sandwich in there too. And don't go skipping dinner just because you're not in here anymore.
I won't.
And where's on the drink case? It's cold.
It's a pretty short trip.
She nods as well. Betty puts the sweater around his shoulders anyway and fusses with the collar for a second or two. Then she throws her arms around his neck.
I'm so proud of you, bud.
Thanks. I love you.
I love you too.
She clings on tight for a second or two, then lets go. Betty flicks away a tear and draws a deep breath.
Well,
She steps back and looks at him. David glances down at the remote.
You better stand back a little.
Betty and Mr. Johnson cross towards the corner of the room, and David points the remote at the TV. Cut to exterior modern housing tract. Day. All the Spanish houses stretch toward infinity. A West Tech security patrol cruises by them at a crawl. A second or two later, all the sprinklers turn on in uniform synchronization. Interior David's living room. He stands in the middle of the living room looking at his new, old surroundings. Everything is the same as it was. The black onyx coffee table, the clean Berber rug, the big screen TV, and his sleek black cabinet. David looks in it and smiles. The place is inadvertently in black and white. He reaches forward and turns on the TV by hand, flipping around the dial. Jerry Springer is berating a prostitute. Tony Robbins hawks self-improvement and an infomercial. Court TV is doing an OJ recap. David unfolds Mr. Johnson's sketch and glances down at it. He smiles to himself, a different kind of nostalgia. The end.
Thank you, guys. Thank you to all who stayed, and thank you to all who had to leave. This was a great read, and thank you for everyone who watched.
Thank you, Jarod.
Thanks.